the last guest writes the first question for the next episode.
Oh, that's nice.
It's a mystery to all of us.
Okay.
So I'll leave it to you. You can read the question and then go with your answer.
Who or what do you see when you look into the mirror? First thing in the morning. Always forward, it says. That's a great question. That's a hard question. I think today, that I can look in the mirror. I can look back on my career, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of my career. There's a lot of things about it that I really loved, I really enjoyed. There's a lot of bad things in it that come with it, which cause PTSD, depression, anxiety, paranoia almost. But in the end today, with the work that I've put in for my career, because I've always wanted to help. That's why we do this job. And there's a lot of good men, just a ton of them, get out there that sacrifice so much. With my story, the way things happened, me being retired, substance abuse issues, post-traumatic stress disorder, having been to treatment several times, getting sober, working, doing the therapies, listening for a change, realizing that my way is terrible, it fails, and I need to listen to somebody else.
You're the only person who ever says that.
Oh,
because all of us have it. We've got it figured out, and it works 100% of the time.
Absolutely. So there was a point. So looking back, so as I move forward through getting better, I was remarried, great relationship with the kids, and we can go into that later, but how that all came about. But I work at a treatment center today for first responders, Magnolia Meadows. It's a great program. I get today to help guys just like us, guys that are scared, guys that are nervous, guys that are lost, guys that don't necessarily want to live anymore. And I get to be a voice for those guys and an ear saying, hey, I've been through this stuff. It is a very scary thing. It is changing. The chiefs are getting behind mental health treatment. It has been long overdue, but it's really cool to get to come in contact with guys that you worked with, the guys that you kicked doors with, arrested people with, chased people with, whatever. And they come to you and say, hey, I'm in trouble, man. I heard what happened to you, and I know what you're doing now. What do I need to do? So when I look at myself in the mirror today, I see there is a sense of pride. Even going through all that terrible stuff, people ask me all the time, what do you regret? And my answer is nothing. And I only say that because there's a lot of bad things that I wish didn't happen, I guess. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I love who I am today. I love where I'm at today. And I'm only this person because of the failures, because of the sacrifices, because of the work I had to put in, the tears, the missed meals. All of that stuff has made me who I am today. And I think it's made me a more caring person. And today, to be honest with you, I think that helping today it feels different, because what I'm doing today isn't just, help. It's helping people. People helped me save my life. They didn't save my life. I did it. But they put me in positions, and they gave me a place to, let's say, be comfortable so I could work on myself, and I wouldn't have those outside stressors of whatever it is weighing down on me, because I had to focus on myself. And it feels very selfish, but it has to happen, because if I don't fix me, I can't help anybody. And I'm not saying I can help everybody, but I can. One of the best compliments I have ever gotten has been twice in treatment work. And it's when guys look at me and say, I don't know what you have, but I want it. I want whatever that is. And to me, that is the absolute compliment, the best compliment I could get. So, trying to live it. I don't try to go around and preach anything, because no one listens. Really, I'm nobody. But when people know who you are and what you've been through, and they see the way you live, you know as well as I do, like, you have those people and they'll tell you what to do, and they'll go do their own thing. And you're like, man, come on, hypocrite, There were several.
Isn't that what we all like to do, though?
Absolutely.
Isn't it so much easier to point the fingers outward?
Absolutely. Because I can give you grace all day long, but I can't give it to myself. I make one mistake, and I'm supposed to be perfect, and it's terrible. And you get stuck in this shame cycle. Let's say you relapse or whatever, you get stuck in the shame cycle, and it does you no good. It does no one any good, because I had a guy tell me, he said, you're never going to get better if you beat yourself up all day long. And I was like, okay, I get that, but how do you get out of that shame? How do you get out of that guilt? And it's just over time, and it's over work. If I had a situation that I need to remedy in my life, let's say alcoholism, and never did anything about it, of course I should. Yes, I feel shame. As I come out of it and I'm dealing with the results of my actions, it sucks. It It's awful. It's hard. It's hard to look in the mirror and admit you were messing up, or you were doing things that you shouldn't be doing, or you were lying, or whatever it was. But I had to own that before I could get better, and get honest with a lot of people. But I do find that when you get honest with people, that's all they want, and it's just like, oh, thank God you finally came clean. All right, let's get some help now. And you're like, what do you mean? You're supposed to be mad. And they're like, no, we just want you to be okay. How many times, I can look back at guys that I know who have either died from alcoholism, drug, substance abuse, or by their own hand. And it's just like, damn, I wish I would have known. I wish you would have just told me so we could get something. The fact that more officers die by suicide than in the line of duties, that is inexcusable to me. Absolutely ridiculous. And I'm so tired of sweeping this stuff under the rug and pretending it doesn't exist. This took a huge toll on my family. This killed my father at 57 years old. Alcoholism did. He was one of the best detectives I've ever seen. I could say, Dad, who breaks into a house in this part of town on Tuesdays while it's raining? Well, it's this person, their mom lives, and I'm like, how do you know this stuff, But the truth is he was a sick man. Great father, great detective, great friend, great person, great brother, great son, whatever. But he was sick and he couldn't get through it, and when I found out he was sick, I got called to a hospital, and let me back up and say, my entire life, all I wanted to do was be him. That was it. He was my absolute hero.
Before we head down that path, I definitely want to cover it all.
Okay.
You mentioned, obviously, the start of the question, talking about who you look at in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You've got about 10 years now since you stepped away from the career?
10 years, 2015.
Looking back with those laps around the sun now and using that analogy of the man you look at in the mirror, between then and today, what was the biggest hurdle or the biggest mountain you had to get over?
Substance abuse. Myself, honestly, because we kind of mentioned it. It's like, we all know what we should be doing. The truth is everything that I did to get better failed. And that's hard for us.
On your own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had every idea and every intention to get better, to stop, do whatever, and I couldn't do it. And I didn't know why I couldn't do it. And I know to some people that might not make sense, but it does to me, and it does to other alcoholics. It really does. And it's just like, you wake up in the morning and you think, how did I do that again? I can't believe I did that again. I'm going to go to this function and I'm going to have 2 drinks. And then by the time you leave that function, you had 12, and you look back like, what happened?
You just had 2 drinks.
Yes, absolutely. I laugh, tell people all the time, I only got drunk once. It just lasted 30 years. So, but it's when you get honest and you want to change, there's things out there. There's people out there that will help you. All you have to do is ask. The problem is me and asking for help, because when I go to a crime or a scene, any kind of scene, I'm in charge. That's it. And what we say goes, and that's it. And, that's a huge boost to the ego. Think about the egos that we have. And mine had to be smashed before I got better. It's just that simple. And and everybody's level is different. Mine was all the way to nothing. Absolutely zero, with a car and some clothes. That's all I had. Yeah. But it's just like, once I decided to listen and get better, I got better.
Well, let's get to the start of that path.
All right.
Some time's already gone by. People listening, they can tell by your accent, New England, maybe Chicago.
My accent? Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah. Shocker, huh?
Is that hometown? Is that where you're born and raised?
I was born and raised in Nashville. Grew up in the west side of town. Mom, dad, mom sold real estate, stayed home when we were kids. Dad was a patrol officer in Nashville. He came on in 73. I can't remember what he told me he made when he came on, but it's like $700 a month or something crazy. Grew up good. Had a great life. Had a great childhood.
Big family, brothers, sisters?
One brother. We're not close. We haven't spoken 15 or 16 years.
You older or younger?
Younger.
He's younger than you?
He is older than me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's around DC, but 1,000 cousins, aunts, uncles, huge family. And like I was saying, but every hero that I had in my life, my father, my uncles, my dad, or my grandfather, were all alcoholics. Grandfather was a World War II veteran, dad police, uncles police. And so we have a police and fire family. Most of the people I grew up with, even friends, you're either police or fire. Just kind of the crowd we were around. But
let's tackle the obvious question.
All right.
Nashville, Tennessee.
Yep.
How are you wearing an Alabama hat?
He was a fan. My dad was a fan.
Okay.
Okay. And like I said, if he was going, I mean, I was on his tail. Like he was my idol. He was my hero. And
back home, do you have to like sneak it out and like?
No, actually, yeah, it's not that bad, right? Because we have Vandy, and I love Vandy. God bless Vandy, but they're not really a football school. But it's just something that I'd had, my whole life. Just been a Bama fan. So,
what took up your time as a little kid?
Sports. We played ball constantly. We were that age where there was no video. There really wasn't video games, but that's all we did. We grew up in a neighborhood that was gigantic, and it had 1,000 kids. So we stayed outside, and it was one of those where you'd leave in the morning and you show back up at night. And recently I just went to my mom's and told her all the stuff that I got away with, which is pretty funny. And that's what I told her. I was like, I didn't see you from like 93 to 96. I don't even know where you were at, but she worked a lot, and we're kind of left to our own.
I was having a conversation with a friend recently and thinking back to being a kid and those mornings where you're basically wolfing down breakfast because all your friends are waiting outside and you just want to get out there.
Yeah.
And your mom or dad is just like, slow down, chew your damn food. They'll be there, you know?
Yeah. We had a neighborhood pool. I actually ended up lifeguarding when I was 16 there. But, that's what you did in the summertime. You went to the pool, you rode bikes, you played ball. We played a lot of basketball. I played soccer, baseball, basketball, that kind of stuff. But that's all we did was sports.
Any aspirations of pro or college with any of it?
Not really. And to be honest with you, I probably could have played at a small school, but alcohol stole that. I was much more interested in drinking than I was. But I'll say this, in high school, I got to play with a McDonald's All-American, which was really cool. A guy named Charles Hathaway. He ended up playing at Tennessee. But I think our senior year, he was number 9 player in the country. And to play with a guy like that, and he was such a good teammate and such a good person. I still talk to him every once in a while, but it was a really cool experience to see someone of that caliber, and I was nowhere near that caliber. I worked really hard. I was really good at defense, but you play with a guy like that, and he scores. But he's a great guy.
You've already mentioned your dad's battle with addiction and how it carried on to you, and you've already mentioned that you found alcohol young in life.
Very.
Let's cross the bridge of you as a young kid. Were you seeing it in your dad, or was he hiding it pretty well?
No, my dad, he drank openly. And he was
from the addiction perspective, though. Now that you
no, absolutely not. To me, it was normal, and that's one of the things that to me, a kid drinking isn't necessarily unnormal because I was in my house, right? So I started getting the sips of beer when I was 12-ish, 11, 12. And I knew I could get a sip if I went and got dad a beer for him, he would give me and that's just kind of the way it went. That's how it started. Then move on to, my dad was that man's man. He was that alpha guy, and he told me, he said, if you work hard at the end of the day, you get to have a beer. That's what you get. And so by 14, I started cutting grass in the neighborhood. It was a gigantic neighborhood. I even had 2 guys working for me, and I didn't care about the money. I cared about the beer I got at the end of the day, and that's the truth. The money was whatever. It's at the end of the day, I worked hard. My dad let me have a beer, and that's how it started. Because, at that time, that's what he does. That's what I need to do. This tough guy, my dad can beat up all of your dads type guy. That's what he does, so that's what I want to do, and that's kind of how it started. And then by like 14, 15, he played basketball in a church league, and I would always go with him. And then I would watch him play. And then we would leave there and we would go to Krispy Kreme Donuts and get my mother donuts. And then we'd go across the street to the liquor store. This is a church league basketball league. And we'd get a 6-pack and we'd drink beer on the way home. I'm 14, 15 years old. And then he would stop at the back of the neighborhood, which was a big neighborhood. And then we'd switch seats and he'd let me drive home. So at 14, 15, I'm drinking and driving. I'm with my father, who's a cop. I think it's completely normal because he wouldn't let me do anything that would hurt anybody. That would be crazy. But now later in life, like with
what years are we talking about?
You talking about the
like you're 14, 15?
14 is probably 92.
Okay.
91, 92. 91,
okay.
Yeah, 91.
Just
91.
put it into perspective.
Yeah, about 91.
Now, is your drinking at this point unregulated on your father's side, or is he basically, hey, you can have a beer?
It's not all right. So it's not unregulated, but it's not very strict. We'll say it like that. And I'm not saying that we drank every night or anything like that, but it wasn't uncommon.
Right.
And it just increased as the years went by. My mother had no idea. I've talked to her about a lot of this stuff since, and she's just like, I can't believe. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, it's what we did. I can't remember where we at before.
Well, we were just talking about the alcohol, how it became a part of your life to the point that you're saying you were decent enough in sports, but yet the alcohol was your primary motivator. Mowing lawns, that was your primary motivator. And then I was just tying in the component of your dad's alcoholism.
So as the years went on, it progressed. And my dad always told me, he said, look, if you want to have a beer, have a beer. Don't drink and drive. And I was like, cool, okay. Keeping in mind that he taught me how to drink and drive. And the one time I did when I was in high school, I came home from a date and I had been drinking that whole night. And every night my father would wait up for me and then we would talk and I would go to bed. And so I came home this day and I knew I was drunk. And so for some reason, like this, I think that if I just skirt him and head up the steps real fast, that he's not going to notice, right? And so I remember I was standing there, and he came up behind me, and he was right here on my side. He said, "You have fun tonight?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he knew right away. He said, "Go to bed. We'll talk about it tomorrow." I said, "Okay." So the next day and I'm terrified. He's a gigantic man, and he looked at me. He said, "Were you drunk last night?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I was." He said, "Okay, don't do it again." And he turned and walked off. And I thought, that's the punishment I got for that. Now I didn't do it anymore, but it was, looking back on it, having sons, I can't fathom that. I can't even get it. I've never let either one of my sons sip alcohol, let alone not get on for drinking and driving or, whatever that is. But, and that progressed. And as the years went by, it just became more and more and more. When I was 15, we went to New Orleans for New Year's. We had the corner balcony at Bourbon and Toulouse. I'm 15 years old. I drank the entire time. I think about it now. I'm like, who does that? So it's normal. And there's been several trips like that throughout the years, fishing trips and stuff, where I drank freely. And so when Mom wasn't around, let's say we were at, my grandfather had a fishing camp on the Tennessee River. When we were there, it was free game, and so it was normal. But I think, looking back on it, the first time someone told me I was an alcoholic, I was probably 16 years old. And I laughed at them. And I thought that's the dumbest thing I could have, that's ridiculous. And looking back on it, they were absolutely correct. I've had addiction issues since the moment I loved it. I loved every second of it.
So by 16, was it such an impact in your life that it became a daily habit for you?
Not daily, no. Every other weekend, probably.
But when you drank, it was...
There's no limit. It was. I've always drank pretty much, and not to say every time, but generally speaking, you drink till you either run out or pass out. That's it. You sitting around with your buddies in the driveway around a fire pit. It was a badge of honor to be the last one up. I can drink all of them under the table. Looking at my mindset then and now is so far apart that I can't even describe it. But that's a badge of honor. But to me, it's not now. It's awful.
Any negative component to living and working, you living and growing up where your dad was a cop?
I don't think so. We had a very good, our family was very respected. We had a good reputation. And so, no, I don't think that had any effect on it whatsoever. My childhood was great. I don't want you to think that I look back on my childhood and think this was terrible, because it wasn't. My parents both make mistakes, just like, all of us do. But in the grand scheme of things, I've always felt loved. My parents were always around. I've never looked up in the stands when I was playing ball and didn't see them. They always told me they loved me. I got plenty of hugs and all that kind of stuff. And it's just who I am.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. That was how your parents were.
Yep.
It's real easy to get up on a soapbox and point, like we talked about earlier, point fingers about, they should have done this or they should have done this. For them, what you were doing was within their acceptable level of behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And my dad hid part of it from Mom, but for the most part, yes.
Do you think his tolerance to your level of drinking was because of his own level of drinking?
Do you mean does he let me drink because of his drinking?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think so. I think that was a good way for him to get away with it too. In part, yeah. But we were very close. He was not close with my older brother, so I think that had a lot to do with it too. Because I was just like him. My older brother was not. So I think it was a bonding thing too, with what he did with his dad. My dad was an alcoholic. My grandfather he could be violent. He clearly had PTSD from World War II. My dad was involved in several shootings. But
did your dad serve in the military prior to being?
He did not. He was not eligible for Vietnam. He was declared ineligible, whatever it was. And so in '73, that's when he went on to the police department. So.
Any other family in law enforcement?
Uncle, cousins. My uncle retired now. My cousin left just like I did. Dad. I've got some cousins that are firemen, but that's about it.
All in the Nashville area?
Nashville and surrounding counties.
Coming out of high school, what was your plan?
I actually went to UT Chattanooga. I had two goals. And I kind of always knew I was going to be a cop because it was my entire life. I grew up in the police department, running around the CJC, the Criminal Justice Center, even during school. And I'm like, why was I not at school? Like, I remember going to felony docket with him, misdemeanor court, and trying to figure out why I wasn't in school that day. I look back on it, I don't know why, but the majority of my memories are me at that, running around and stuff like that. But in high school, I loved participating with the kids from Special Olympics. So I had a goal of either being a special education teacher or a law enforcement. So my major in college was actually special education. And then so I went off to Chattanooga. Obviously, I have alcohol issues. It was a lot of fun. I didn't make it past the semester. Came home from school, decided that I was going to go to the police academy. I was obviously 18, 19 years old at that time.
What was the age requirement back
21. So got a job, bought a house. Actually bought a house with my college money because I knew what I was going to do. And in Nashville, there were certain requirements. So I knew what I had to do to get on the police department. I'm not a school guy. I don't like it. I hate it. So I knew what I had to do to get hired, and that's all I did. But alcohol became my goal then. It became what I did for several years. And it was fun hanging out. I lived with, two of my buddies. We all worked together doing landscaping. We partied together, and honestly, it was a good time.
Never enough to detract you from going, maybe I don't want to go the cop route.
Absolutely not. No, at that point I decided, it was kind of I always knew that's probably what I was going to end up doing anyways. And once I made the decision to go through with it, that was it.
Was your dad for it or against it?
For it. Let me back. I don't know if he's for it or against it, but he wasn't against it. I'm sure it scared him quite a bit, knowing what he knew. He did get a really bad phone call one morning about a car wreck I had gotten into, and I can't even imagine when your son sergeant calls you at 5:50 in the morning, and you realize who it is. The fear that the fear that went through him, and he answered the phone, and he told me this, and so did the sergeant. My sergeant told him, hey, this is Sergeant blah blah, and he said the only thing he said was, "How bad is he?" Because he knew what could happen.
Why else would he be calling?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a bad car wreck. It wasn't, a bunch of stitches and some bumps and bruises, but that's really about the most major thing I ever suffered as far as an injury went, physical injury. So, yeah. What
about your mom? Was she ever voice anything towards you?
No, she didn't. And she was supportive of it for sure. My parents were always very supportive. She would always make comments, about being worried and stuff like that. But, when we kind of had maybe I'm weird for doing this, but we would always have if an officer got really hurt or, whatever, I would always call and say, hey, someone's hurt, it ain't me. And then they call everybody else because, you get in those moments of pure chaos when an officer's hurt, you can't get to the phone. So, and that stuff hits the news. The news media is wrong sometimes. It's the wrong person. So I always try to make sure that they knew I was okay, at that moment. So
when you got old enough to start applying, all your eggs in one basket with Nashville PD, or?
Threw in there, got high right away. Again, Dad, he was there for years. He had a good reputation. So,
was he still on the job when you?
Oh yeah. We actually worked for the same lieutenant for 5 years. It was pretty cool. We'll talk about that later. But getting hired was very easy for me. Got on right away. The first class I could have gone to, session 36 in 1999. 21 years old, fresh 21-year-old. Second youngest on the department for a while, and the guy that was younger than me was 2 days younger. Which is pretty funny, but I'm 21 years old. I'm police, here's a gun and a badge and here's blue lights, go to work. And it's I look back on it now because I see 21-year-old officers now and I'm like, oh my God, did I look that young? And
you did.
Absolutely. And
you were just as dumb as they were.
I know, right? And it's funny. I realized that when I made sergeant, went back to patrol, I started supervising, and I was like, God, were we like this, man? But it was fun and we did a lot of good and we helped a lot of people. And, it was kind of a culture shock. And some of the calls I went on to that have really stuck with me were really early on because I'd never seen that stuff before. I grew up in middle class neighborhood, upper middle class.
So that, before I ask this question, what year did you go into the academy?
99.
Okay. It's funny you say that though, because you've talked about how you spent so much time with your dad and doing stuff in and around the station, but never went on actual ride-alongs where you were exposed to what was going on the street?
No. And I'll tell you why, because I was 10, 11, 12, all the way up. I did ride-alongs as I got 18 and stuff through some like classes and stuff, but I never rode with him.
Got it.
Now we did get to work together as an officer, and we talked about that in a little bit. It was really cool, but no. So when I get in patrol, I'm seeing this stuff for the first time. You know, there's one that really stands out to me, which was my first completed suicide call, that I could still see and I could still hear and I could still all that stuff. And I remember being terrified. Like, I don't want to go to this. I don't want to see this. I think a lot of people don't really cops don't like seeing this stuff. They don't want to see it. We see it because we have to. We see it so nobody else has to.
Had you experienced death prior to becoming a cop?
A little.
Directly connected to you?
The only, probably one of the hardest and the first ones I really dealt with was my freshman basketball coach. I don't want to say, he was really instrumental in me going to that school to play for him. And I really loved him and he loved me. And during our freshman year, we had the best team that had come to that school in a long time. We were really good, some good ball players. And then Christmas break, and then he had surgery in Christmas break and died during surgery. So we come back from Christmas break and they pull us into a room to tell us our coach is dead. And it's just like, none of us, I don't think any of us had experienced that. But for me, it was really difficult because of how much I admired him. And if you play sports, your coaches are your heroes. They help raise you. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And as a matter of fact, I chose not to go to his funeral because I didn't know how to deal with those emotions, which luckily, unluckily, carried on throughout my life because I don't know how to deal with emotions. I deal with them one way, and that's to get drunk. That way so I can numb out and not have to think about it. But the problem is, for a lot of us, is when we quit the drinking, when we get that under control, that stuff is not gone, it's still there. And that's the problem, is that alcohol is my solution, it's not my answer. I've got to have a way to clear up the stuff in my head so I don't have to drink. I need a set of rules that I can go by, guidelines, because we're as officers, we have rules, and we stay in those rules, or bad things happen. And so I need rules. I'm not good left to my own device. I am not. And so I need structure. And so that's kind of what I sought to get, sober and to get better from the PTSD.
That first suicide call, was it somebody close to your age or was it an older person?
I'll never forget it. I was working midnights, West Sector. It was a put out on Elston Place, which is it's actually a little street that it's near downtown, but it's got a lot of bars and famous places you can play music. But there was an apartment complex and they put it out and I was very close. I was very close. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to go to this. I don't want to see this. But you can't say that because you can't show weakness, right? So I ended up getting there, and as I went in, I was the first one there. And literally, I can't remember if I'd seen one at this point or not. I was by myself. It was after training. Anyway, so I go in, and there's a guy sitting to my right, and I'll never forget him. He was sitting on the ground, leaning up against the wall in the field, like he was holding his knees, and he was just rocking, and he was screaming. And I passed him up, and she was laying on the bed. She had shot herself in the head. And I've never seen anything like that. And I remember the color of her blood very vividly, very vividly. And I remember thinking, God, she's so young. And but over the years, I can tell you that it's not necessarily the bodies that bother me, it's the family. It's screams. And I still remember the guy rocking. I never forgot it. And there was one where a mother was standing in her kitchen, and her son had killed himself, committed suicide in the living room. And the scream that she let out, I have never in my life been able to get that out of my head. It's just horrible, But the sad thing is, you get used to seeing that stuff. You get desensitized to the body, the violence. Because something happens, someone gets killed, it's almost like, well, it's just another crime scene. You can't. You have to shut off that emotion, the gallows humor. You have to start, and it can seem cold, but you have to do something to get through that moment because we are human like everybody else. We're not Supermen, We deal with, the emotions, and then you go home and your family wants to know about your day. What do you say? You don't want to not tell them, to shield them, but you can't tell them the details because you don't want them to experience that.
Well, then a lot of people who don't do these careers, there's so many secondary issues that come about with that. You're now dealing with, even though it's a suicide, it's still a investigation scene. I'm not going to call it a crime scene, but it's an investigation scene. So things need to be preserved. Obviously, the body can't be touched. You're stuck there. If it's like my agency, you're stuck there till the coroner shows up.
Yep.
You now have to protect the entire scene, which means you're going to engage with the family who are grieving. They want to come in and see, they can't. So now you're put in the position of being the bad guy who's not going to let mom or dad or brother or sister, husband, wife get near. There's so many different jobs that you have that are all trauma-based. You're, like you said, you're sitting there listening to the people wailing in their sadness. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you can go, hey guys, I need a break. I need to go to my car and just let out a scream or something for a second. All of this is just the day. It's the job.
Yeah. And, you know, you hold people back and you say, huh, you know, he's gone. And, you know, it's that scream and it hits you such like in your gut. And then the problem for me, but you're busy in that moment. You're busy protecting the crime scene. You're busy calling your partners, passing information, whatever it is. And for me, it was really bad when I got home and everything got quiet. And then I started seeing, you know, you see what you saw, you know, at work and, you know, everybody else is asleep and you can't sleep because of what you just saw. So how do you sleep? You pound a bottle of whiskey. That's what you do. You know, maybe not everybody does that, but I did, you know, and that's the way I got through it. And it kind of rolled like that for a long time. I wasn't in patrol a lot. I was not a patrol guy.
Let me take you back real quick though. You're in the academy in 1999. What's the alcohol component? Is there ever a point where you're like, man, I got to get this under control because it's impacting my ability to get through the academy or anything like that? Or did you slide right through the academy?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I never had an issue with the academy. I was in really good shape. I could drink all night and get up and do it. And I was bulletproof. And it was just, I was 21 years old, you know. But no, I never wanted to stop. I never considered it because you got to remember, this is something that's been my whole life. This is not wrong. This is not abnormal. This is what we do. This is what my family does, and it's the only life I've ever had. Because you got to. So if I started drinking kind of at 12 and starts progressing, there's not really many memories of me that I have of doing things without alcohol. In you know, like grilling without alcohol, that's crazy, you know. And so like when I did, it was very difficult to do things when I got sober without alcohol. It was really an issue, and it's kind of like, it was weird. I remember cutting the grass again for the first time again this morning. I'm like, I don't have, like, what do I do? I don't have a beer with me, you know. And it's just, that might sound crazy, but that's the truth, you know. It's such a part of you that it's normal, you know.
Being the young new guy on the job, when you first hit patrol, you're into training. Any type of negative pushback or feedback, like, hey, we don't care if your old man's on the job, you know, and in any type of negative way, or were you kind of brought into the fold right away?
You know, you worry about that being, so I remember, I'll say it like this. For a long time, I was Billy's son. And that didn't bother me. It gave me a sense of pride, kind of, you know, but I wanted to be my own guy. So I don't, there was nothing negative. And I didn't run around, you know, this is, you know, I'm Billy's, you know, I actually stuck my head down. I busted busted it to create my own reputation because he was a burglary detective. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be in patrol. I wanted to work dope. I wanted to work vice. So I think that helped me in the sense that I went a different direction than he did in his career. But I remember when I was known as Scott and how cool that was, because it was like, okay, I finally did it. You know, not that I was embarrassed or ashamed to be who I was. I just really wanted to be myself.
Took you a while to get out from behind his shadow.
Yeah, not even that long. Because we, you know, like I said, I kind of went a different route, and I got in with some good teams, and we got some lucky on some really cool cases and stuff like that. And you know, it was just different than what he did, so it was kind of cool. You know, I've always been one that, let's say I was in Vice and a patrol officer called, he needed help with a small amount of whatever it was, I'd still show up. You know, I'm going to help this guy. He needs help. Try to, you know, that kind of stuff. So I was always very helpful to other officers. I believe we obviously we should all be like that. But
how big was the organization at this time?
1,200. Pretty good size. 1,300. I think it's like almost 14 now.
And you made detective after how many years? So
was in patrol. The first detective unit I was in was probably in 2004 or five maybe. I left patrol, went to bikes, did a bike unit in the projects around Nashville. Nashville's got quite a few, so did that for a while. That was a lot of fun. Kind of jumped back and forth like into patrol and stuff, trying to find what I really wanted to do. I ended up working a team called Flex. Flex is a uniformed marked car proactive unit, and you just kind of figure out the areas that have trouble and you go work those areas.
Saturation patrols.
Absolutely. And so that was fun. My sergeant, kind of funny, my sergeant at that time did not want me. He didn't really know me, and my lieutenant made him take me. And so I ended up becoming pretty close with him, and we had a really good team. So he ended up going over. He came out of ICE when he made sergeant, and then he went over to I worked West Precinct, so it was a West Crime Suppression Unit, and so they were responsible for street level drugs and prostitution and gambling. So when he went over there, I shortly followed him, and that was the first detective plainclothes unit I worked in. Lots of search warrants, lots of entries, lots of training. I love training. I'm a big fan of it. He went on back to Vice and took over Major Vice. You're a good supervisor too when people follow you. That's you always got those sergeants that you can't get a spot on their team because everybody stays, and that's a good thing. And that's the way he was. So in Nashville, we had Special Investigations Division. Interdiction, gangs. We had 3 gang units, dignitary protection, Vice, the task force, and all that kind of stuff.
Dignitary for the chief or city officials?
City chief, chief, mayor, and that. So, I went over to when I left there. I left CSU. So after 3 years ish in CSU and the street level stuff, you have to rotate out for obvious reasons, so you don't get dirty, or the theory behind that. So right as my time came up, a spot on the gang unit in SID opened up.
Was the rotation the same for all detective assignments?
Nope.
Or just CSU?
Just CSU. This is kind of funny because there's other units that did. So I went to gang unit, right? So in the gang unit, we're responsible for monitoring. Everybody was kind of assigned a gang to look over, but in that you used drug buys too, which was common. But there was no 3-year and out. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. But I was over there for a while, and through all of this time, it's just the same. Nothing has changed. Nothing really worse or nothing really better.
When you're talking about your alcohol?
Uh-huh.
So you're not increasing the amount of drinking?
Not really at this time, okay. I don't think. And so I stayed there for a few years. We did a lot of work with ATF, a lot of wiretaps. We did a T3 on the Bloods gang back in 07 or 08. I think we ended up indicting. We did it with ATF. It was a great case. Ended up indicting, I think, around 60 federally under RICO. And they all went away for a while. It's probably time they're about out now. But it was a really good case. We always worked really well with our federal partners. Worked a lot with ATF, DEA, FBI, secret. I mean, all of them. It was just a good group of guys. So did that for a while. Loved it. Ended up eventually going over to SID narcotics, which was my love. I love doing that stuff. I love planning the buys and search warrants and stuff like that. So lots of training. 10-man team. I say 10-man, 9 guys. We had one female partner, lieutenant sergeant, and we just kind of all rolled together. It was, people asked, they're like, man, that's so dangerous. And I'm like, man, I always had 9 people with me like that. I mean, and we would plan buys or whatever, takedowns or whatever, and we would plan everything. And if it didn't go to our plan, we just didn't do it because it wasn't worth someone getting killed over or hurt. So I always said, the patrol officer answering that 911 hang-ups, that was way more dangerous than what I did. We always had a plan. We had the option to just say, kill it, we're done. And what's cool is that anybody on the team could call it. So we had a lot of trust amongst each other. And I mean, obviously we had supervision, but these are situations where my sergeant might not see what I see. So there's no time to say, hey, boss, or whatever. So if anybody on that team called it, it was over with. That was period. And I think that there's probably been several occasions that saved someone's life, to be honest with you. But it was it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Everyone took off at the same time. Like nobody wanted to miss anything. So, we would end up we worked a ton of overtime, lots of search warrants. I worked my way up to being the point man on the entry team. Did that for years. Loved it. Had a lot of pride in that. I thought that was, for me, that was a position, that was one of those things like, I want that. And, I ended up getting it through a lot of training, hard work, and that kind of stuff. But lots of fun stories on that. And, I don't want anyone to think like my career was just riddled with alcoholism. It was terrible. I loved being a police. I loved it. I had a great career. Never suspended for anything. And we'll talk about later why I left and when I left. But I'm very proud of my service. When I left, I was asked, will you be satisfied? And my answer was absolutely. And I've never had one regret about leaving. I do miss the guys and I miss the stuff, but I don't regret leaving. And I don't regret only doing the 16 and a half or whatever I did, because we squeezed a lot into that. We really did. There were, like takedowns on wiretaps. We go to work for 2 days, and stuff like that. But in the grand scheme of it, it wasn't good for me, in the long run with my alcoholism and stuff. And I'm happy where I'm at.
You mentioned becoming the point man.
Mm-hmm.
So was your team a SWAT team, or were you cross-training with SWAT, or was it just all in-team tactics?
Well, obviously we trained with SWAT too. So any kind of search warrant we would do, and we would do 2, 3, 4 a week. I mean, we had a really active team, or we'd go help somebody with one. Risk analysis, point system. If it's below this, we can do it. If it's here, we have to consult SWAT. If it's here, SWAT has to do it.
Got it.
We did a ton of them. We did a ton. We did lots of training with search warrants, lots of moving things around in house. Like we had a place to train where you could move walls and stuff. So we would train constantly. We loved it. We loved training, and we knew that training was going to save us, possibly save our lives. So we did a lot of it. But
ever any aspirations for SWAT?
yes, but the problem was there was one time I actually was trying out, and I tore my shoulder up, my right shoulder, so I didn't get to do it.
Sponsorship for this podcast comes from Brothers in Arms USA. They're a veteran-owned and operated clothing and accessories brand that's 100% American-made. Every piece tells a story of brotherhood, respect, discipline, and honor. Deeply inspired by those who serve, those who have served, and those who have paid the ultimate price serving our great country. Whether you're an outdoor enthusiast, a proud patriot, or simply somebody who values high-quality American craftsmanship, they've got something for you. Go check out brothersinarms.com, spelled out fully, brothersandarms.com, and use the promo code TRANSITION20 to get 20% off your purchase.
By the time I got to Vice, I was working so much overtime, and we were already doing this, all that stuff. There was no way, so I did not. That's the one thing in my career that I wanted to do that I did not. But at that point, working dope and doing wiretaps and working SWAT, it's very difficult for a person to do that. We've had people do it, and it just drove them into the ground because it's so much. I am a huge proponent of time off and taking a step back. And it's hard to do that when you're already working 60 hours and then you got a hostage situation. You know what I mean? So I wish I had. It just didn't work out for me.
Was at that time, or is it now, SWAT a full-time or a collateral assignment?
So it became full-time while I was there. So what they changed, well, you have a call-out team and then you have a full-time team. The full-time team is SRT, Special Response. A bunch of great guys, very trained, very good at what they did. Would have loved to have been a part of that team with those guys because that's how good they were. It just didn't fall. It just wasn't in my cards, So.
Now, your career ultimately ended at the rank of sergeant.
Yes.
At your inception, and even at this point, what's your career aspirations? When do you cross that bridge and start looking at promoting, or was it something that you wanted early on, or it kind of had to be forced into it?
No, I definitely wasn't forced into it. I had the idea, I took the test right away as soon as I could. It was like 3 years in. And I think about that, being a sergeant, 24 years old, like, come on, I'm glad. It was definitely good that I didn't get it. But you're on down the road, it kind of, you start, all the training, all the fights, all the chases, it takes a toll at car wrecks and all that stuff. It takes a toll on you. And so I really looked at, like, how long can I do this? I'd love to do this my whole career, and honestly, if I make sergeant, I can come back and I could supervise the team and get back to the drug work. But I knew, once you get promoted, you have to go back to patrol for a certain amount of time. You have to do a rotation in the internal affairs to learn how to do all that stuff. And I always figured, honestly, I would come back to the drug work or the gang unit. I love the gang unit too. I had two great bosses, Kemper in gangs and Nottingham in drugs. And these are guys I looked up to a lot and really admired those guys. But so I always figured I could come back. But there's actually a lot more that happened before that kind of shaped what happened.
I'll leave it to you to tell that story.
So before all of that, is when my father got sick. And so I promoted to sergeant, I think it was in 2014. Yeah, 2014. Before that, back in the, so when I was at West CSU, back up a little bit, my father was a West Precinct detective. So we actually had the same lieutenant, and we worked together. So we worked in the same building, two different teams, but we arrested guys together. We chased a guy together. That was fun. And like, you really, like in childhood, and you think about this, like, this is the guy I want to be like. And now I'm chasing bad guys with him. It's pretty cool, One in particular I remember, but the guy that joined us ended up being my partner in gangs and Vice for years and years and years. And it was just the way it all worked out. But I knew my dad was an alcoholic, period. And honestly, I'll tell you this, the only thing I really wish I had done differently is I wish I would have said something to him, because it wouldn't have mattered. I know it wouldn't have mattered because he was sick, but I would have known that for me, but I was intimidated by him.
You say that you knew your dad was an alcoholic.
By this point, yeah, absolutely.
What about you yourself?
Absolutely.
Going back to that mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wasn't going to admit that.
Oh, okay.
I know that, but I'm not going to tell you that,
Okay.
but he is. But, and at this point, he'd retired. I think it was around 33 years. He had gone back and was doing like 20 hours a week or something, doing background checks for the department. But he spent a lot of time on the lake, the boat. And so I knew everyone knew he was an alcoholic. But like I said, you think about it, it's like, yeah, he's drinking, but he's not hurting anybody. He's not acting crazy. He just drinks. And so, it's one of those things. It's like, you look at it like, maybe he'll fix it himself. Maybe it'll work out, So anyways, so I get called to the hospital. It was August. It was the middle of August. It was 2009. I can always tell how old he is because if my youngest son's 15, he died just prior to him being born. My father never met his youngest grandson. So they get called to the hospital, and I walk in. I really don't know what's going on other than he's sick. That's really all he told me. And I get in, and I walk into his room, and he's speaking in a British accent. He has never in his life done this. I've never heard this. And he did this for 2 days. And I said, what is going on? And they said, he's detoxing. And I was like, well, I don't even know what that is. I had no idea that you detox from alcohol. I didn't have a clue. It never happened to me.
Was he English?
Absolutely not. He was from the country. He was born in the country. So that's why it was, and honestly, it was hilarious. It was absolutely, because of how good he was at it. And so I remember thinking, what is going on? And they said he's detoxing. He's, he was in late stages of cirrhosis of the liver. And I had no idea of stage 4. And that was in the middle of August. And November 21st, I buried him. And that's how fast it happened. And he was probably 6'2", 240 pounds. And when he passed away, he was probably 170 pounds. And that happened from August to November. And he looked like he was 57. He looked like he was in his middle 70s and that's how fast he aged. I looked at him one time and I thought, I didn't even recognize him. That's how awful it was. But, once I found out he was sick, I went and talked to his doctor and asked him how we fixed him. And he said, he's dead. He's just not dead yet. And I'm like, what do you mean? Fix it. Fix him. Get in there. And then lots of anger starts, and guilt and shame. And it's just like, man, what do I do? He was the peacemaker of the family. And when he died, that kind of shifted to me right off the bat. And it was very difficult to grieve and try to figure out what to do, having to deal with, funeral plans, funeral arrangements, all this that I've never done before, but before that, I'll never forget. I went to pick him up from the hospital. He was in a rehab hospital, not like physical rehab. And, he was sitting there and he was crying. I've seen him cry a few times, but I've never seen it that much. And he had a look on his face, and I cannot, for the longest time, I couldn't figure it out. But he was there, and he was crying. He was begging me to stop drinking, and all this stuff. And the look on his face was, I've rarely seen this look. And I figured out what it was later, and it was regret. He knew he messed up because he laid in that bed and he said, all I want to do is see the boys play ball. It's like, it ain't gonna happen, man. He said, all I want to do is meet Wyatt. Not gonna happen. And he knew he messed up. And he said, please don't end up like me. And I was like, man, you're gonna be all right. It's like, well, you get up, you'll be fine, we'll figure out something, and I asked him, and he said, will you take me home to die? I said, I will. And I said, do you have anything in the house? He said, no, I got rid of everything. And I said, all right. I said, well, I'm going to go look now. You know how good I am at searching. And he said, okay, I got a bottle of vodka in this coat, this, that. And I'm like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, you hear when it comes to like substance abuse and alcoholism, you hear about powerlessness. And I thought that was the weakest shit I've ever heard in my life. I thought what is wrong with you? Like, are you kidding me? And that happened. And I didn't understand it until I tried to stop. And it's a whole different ball game. But, that's the disease. His disease tells him he didn't have one. And his disease probably told him, what does it matter now? Might as well go out. And so anyway, we ended up getting, got him a hospital bed, put in his bonus room. In the last 3 days of his life, I stayed with him. I slept next to him on the couch. His bed was here. I slept on the couch, held his hand. And I was lucky enough to be with him when he passed. And I'll never regret that. So ended up burying him, normal, and then went back to it. Shut everything down. There's no emotion. That shit's over with. And you talk about progressing. That's where it did. And that might sound insane that I just watched my hero drink himself to death. And let me back up real fast. The moment he died, I was drunk. I had a 12-pack or a case of beer in the bushes outside because nobody. I was the only one that really drank it, but I didn't know what to do. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle him dying. I couldn't handle him being sick, and I didn't want to deal with it. So the only thing I knew how to do was the old standby, which was to get drunk. And the moment he died, I was drunk. I was drunk when we buried him. There's no question. But that's the only way. That's the way I was. I don't say brought up. That's the only way I knew to deal with it, right? So that's when everything really escalated as far as my drinking went, and that went 6 years. By the time 6 years straight, I drank. I don't know if I took a day off in 6 years drinking. Honestly, maybe 1 or 2 here, so people would shut up and leave me alone. I'd say I didn't drink today. I'm fine. And ended up being around about a bottle of whiskey a day. But it's still. I mean, I'm drinking a bottle of whiskey a day. I get up, we work out, we train, we go to work, we come home, and it's a cycle that just continues. And that's just how it went for years and years and years. And then, it still got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's a very, very scary, lonely place because you don't know what to do. You don't know who to call. It's clearly I had a problem. Clearly I couldn't stop no matter what. So it's kind of, what do you do? So it just kind of continued on for like that until I finally came clean. And I'll tell you how I came clean was.
Before we get into that, I want to ask, your dad already knew your drinking was out of control.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's because him being an alcoholic himself, maybe he was seeing things on a deeper level, but other than your dad pointing it out, anybody else in your life at that point in time?
Not really anybody that would say anything. And he knew because we drank together. So, like I said, we were very close. We drank together.
The drinking wasn't impacting your family, your kids?
No, not at this point. Not at this point.
Well, let me ask it this way. In your mind, it wasn't impacting your family and your kids?
In my mind, everything's good. I'm holding everything together. This is normal. But keep in mind, I do think it's normal because this is how I was raised, right? And I was talking to my wife, and one thing I'm very proud of, and this is ridiculous to be proud of, but I've never given my kids a sip of alcohol ever because I knew that was wrong when I had kids. I'm like, man, I don't want my kids doing this because in the back of my head, I know what I am. I know who I am, and I don't want to push this onto them, right? I don't want them to think it's okay. So the majority of my drinking was after they were asleep, but yeah. But in my mind, I'm holding it together.
Never impacted work?
No, it didn't. I had a great career, like I said. It was just, I don't know why. I don't know how I was able to get around. But, like I said, at this point, it wasn't. Absolutely not. I don't know if it ever really did. Sorry, go ahead.
Are you at a level each day, like when you're at work, are you getting through your shift fine?
Absolutely.
So there's no point during the shift, man, I just need to get home because I need a drink.
I can tell you in my lifetime of drinking, I probably had 5 to 6, 7 hangovers. Hangovers. I never had hangovers. And I was like, man, I don't know if this is good or not. My body doesn't even, it doesn't even give me hangovers, So there was no reason to be like, oh man, I need to get this under control. I can't work. I wake up bright eyed and get after it, which is crazy. But because like I said, I never knew about the detox thing till I was like, what do you mean? It can kill him? What do you mean it can kill him? And I was like, hit him with, give him something, knock him out. And they're like, we gave him all we can. If we give him anything else, we'll kill him. And I'm like, dang, in my mind, I'm like, well, this might be serious. To me, he's not gonna die. He's Superman. He's gonna get up here in a day or two. He'll be fine. But never happened.
So you said after your dad passed away, that's what ramped up your drinking.
Yes, I think so. It was just one of those things, man. It's like it kind of felt lost. He was, whether or not he was an alcoholic or not, he was the guy I went to for advice. This is the guy who I follow his lead, and he was gone. I didn't have it, and not that he didn't prepare me for it. I just wasn't ready for it. He's 57 years old. He's not supposed to be dead. He should be coaching ball with me, getting thrown out of ball games like I knew he would for arguing and yelling at the umpires. That's who he was, and he should have done all that, and I wasn't ready for it. I didn't expect it, and you got to keep in mind he's 57 years old. From August to November. And, a couple months, he's gone. There was no time to wrap your head around anything.
And you're how old at this point?
Oh, Lord, I was 36, 37, maybe 37, 38, something like that. But, so it was just kind of one of those, it's, and it's, I still to this day think about him all the time. And one of the things that hurts me, I have a hard time hearing his voice, and it really bothers me, But it was one of those things. It's like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to say. We had a department that said, "Hey, if you need help, come to us." But who's going to do that? You're going to let the department know you got problems with alcohol? Oh my God, they'll fire you in a second. And that's the mentality. And if I go get help, and this is a great thing to talk about here, I knew if I got help, in my mind, that being the point man, those guys aren't following me in that house. They're not going to trust me. They're not going to want to work with me. I'm going to be weak, and I'll be an outcast. I ask people all the time, like when I talk at conferences, how many of you would run through gunfire for your partners when they're in trouble? Every single person raises their hand. Now, how many of you will look at your partner and say, "Hey, man, I think you're drinking too much," or "I think that you need to talk to somebody"? Nobody will do that, because it's not manly and it's not cool. We all know that guy who's been burned out for 10 years, who is just, there's one guy that I worked around. He was in a bad mood. I'm not kidding, for 10 years. I've never seen this guy smile. What is that? Is that PTSD? Is that depression? Of course it is, And I wish, in my mind, I think a lot of complaints, a lot of civilian, interactions that go bad would go away if we had our mental health in check. You got a guy that's burnt out. He gets put in a situation where it's escalated. How much is he really going to help that situation, right? And besides, we leave this job. We deserve to live a long time. We sacrifice a lot. Our family sacrificed to die at 57, to die by our own hand. It's unbelievable. I don't know why everybody isn't just up in arms about this, or what can we do better, But it's that mentality of, we'll be fine. He'll be all right. He's good. He's good. He'll pull himself out of this. He's done it before, right? And I deal with, and talk to places now where, departments have 3 and 4 people take their own lives in a very short period of time. And that there's no reason for that. It's always going to happen, but what are we doing to stop it? What are we doing to help? What are our wellness units? There's a lot of departments that don't have wellness units, and that's terrible. But what are we doing really? And I'll say this, chiefs, unbelievable now. If I get a hold of a chief, if I'm trying to talk to someone, they push me right where I need to be. And that's incredible. And that says a lot about how police work has changed and how these departments changed. Because most of the people I worked with, they're chiefs now, and they're the commanders and all that stuff.
Something you said, though, earlier, and we joked about it, but it's true. So many young men and women come into this job, these careers, whether it be veteran or first responder, very, very young. No way are they anywhere near the maturity level that they need to be. And how do they mature? With all this trauma dropped on them every single day. And then you go 15, 20 years down the road and you expect them, and I know I'm saying this rhetorically, you expect them to be normal?
Yeah.
And it's great that agencies now are saying, and I believe that this needs to be done from day one. Hey, that Rubik's Cube between your ears, when the puzzle's not coming, go talk to somebody. It's okay. We're not completely there yet, but we're getting there. But even still, you're taking a young 22, 23-year-old young man, young woman, and exposing them to stuff that they've never seen in their life. And then telling them that, all right, there's that one. Now you got another one.
Yeah. We're our own worst enemies. We do it to ourselves. No one stopped me from getting help but me. It was offered. Now, again, as the years have gone on from 70s to now.
Well, the funny thing you say that, though, yes, ultimately it falls on you. But so much of it is driven by our culture.
Yes.
Because if it was a different culture.
It's very true.
Where the perception was, if you said that I'm struggling and you 100% felt that you'd be supported and that there would be no ramifications, you'd have no problems raising your hand and going, I need help.
That's true. Yeah.
It's the perception of the culture that you said, I don't trust the culture to raise my hand and say, I need help.
Yeah. And, I think for me, especially where I'm at now, for me, when it comes down to it, is that, when I have to look at my life, it's a job. And I hate to say that because I love to do it. And I can get a job anywhere. So for me, and I hope, I got to take care of me. But being in that position, as far as mental health, yes, you're absolutely correct. But now thinking about it, I did the right thing by leaving because I have a family,
Well, hell, if I could do anything right now, I would love to take that person put them 5 years beyond retirement so they know what retirement's like, and then go back to starting at the beginning and go, you remember when you walk away, nobody cares about you anymore. It's just a job. It's just a uniform. So work your whole career understanding it's just a job.
I lost everything, period. The only thing that matters to me now is my wife and kids, and that's it. Nothing else. My family, that's it.
What was the final straw for you to finally sit? Because you ultimately did raise your hand
Absolutely.
and say, I need help.
So, and it was always offered. And so I was actually I was at a conference getting an award for the largest, I think it was meth seizure in Tennessee that year. And it was 7:30 in the morning, and I'm sitting in my hotel room and I'm pounding whiskey. And I'm like, I'd almost asked several times, but it was something about this moment. I was like, I've got to be done with this. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And so, man, it was a tough day or two thinking about it.
Was that literally your first time where in your head you're like, all right, I've got a problem. I need to slow.
I knew I had a problem. I don't think I could tell you I thought it was uncontrollable. Even though looking now, it clearly was uncontrollable. Like, it was clearly out of control.
I'm just trying to figure out why that moment did you finally...
Well, you got to think. So I lost my father, my hero. It was getting worse. Like, it was progressively getting worse. And I didn't want to live like that. And just something about that moment. It was just like, I've got to be done with this. So what do I do? I had no idea. And so I told you my boss in narcotics, at this time I was working for his wife. She was a commander where I was a supervisor. And so when I got back to Nashville, I just picked up the phone and I called her, and I knew if I told her, I would have to get help. So I knew if I told a family member, I could back out of it. I knew if I told her, I had to. So I did it. I picked up the phone, called her. I said, Commander, I need help. I've got, and everybody knew I was an alcoholic. Like, this is not a secret,
Yeah, she's like, it's about
like,
time.
Jesus, like, oh, to keep in mind, like, I'm at conferences with her husband, and she's there at some of them, so she sees. And I said, I really need help, and I've got to stop, and I don't know what to do. And she said, well, we'll send you to PASS. At the time, it was called PASS, Police Advocacy Support Services. Now it's Wellness Unit. And so she's like, we need to send you there, and you can talk to them. And I was like, okay, cool. So I ended up going up there.
Are these city employees that are running this? Or is this a completely contract company?
No, there's some police department people working in there, and the clinicians and stuff like that. The guy I went to that I talked with is still there, actually. I still actually talk to him all the time. So before I tell you what happened, like this part of the story, I do want to say that there is no ill will for some of the stuff that happened. They didn't know. And in the end, they did help me. A lot of it was my pride and ego, and I'm going to tell you the story, kind of what happened. But there is no ill will. I actually talked to him right before I came in here, and a lot of things have changed with Nashville's police department for the incredibly better. It's really cool. It's really cool to see. But I had gone, so I ended up going, talking to them, and my commander kind of put me off. Just, you be off for a few days, and we'll figure this thing out. And so I ended up going up there, and a guy's named David, great guy. Like I said, still talk to him to this day. And I kind of just told him what's going on. He's like, what do you think? I'm like, it's time for me to go. Like, I need to go somewhere. And so they kind of laid out options for me to go to treatment. And I would have the time off to go. But they refer to me as the test case, because I was the first person to step up without being in trouble. Because we'd have guys get DUIs or whatever. But I was the first one to step up and say, hey, I messed up. I need some help, without being in trouble. And so I had several options, one of which was in Nashville, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go to Nashville. I worked dope for a long time. It's a rehab. I don't want to be in rehab with someone I arrested.
Oh, come on. It would have been fun.
Oh, yeah, it'd been interesting. So I ended up going to Alabama to a place that was a first responder program. And I learned a lot there. It kind of was not quite a first responder program. It kind of was. There were some civilians mixed in with us, some, I don't want to say celebrities type people, but we were in a cabin. It was police and military, but then it was like an officer's son, and then it was like a college football player or whatever it was. And so what that did to us, my roommate was a Ranger. I called him Captain America, and he still looks like that. He's hilarious, just gigantic guy. But I was very cautious about what I said around this kid who's not a police officer. It's very difficult for me. Me and you could talk all like right away. The guy I met this morning, right away we're talking. I don't want to say anything from this kid because he doesn't know. He has no clue. And so I got through treatment there good.
In a weird way, were you trying to protect him?
No, I just didn't trust him.
Okay.
Very, very untrusting. And keep in mind, that's kind of like the police thing, but I had been like that my whole life because I'm next to my dad, and that's just the way it went. So I came back energized, full of life, self-knowledge. I got
How
all
long
this.
was the treatment?
30 days, 28 days. Came back, went directly back to work. I'm a sergeant at this point, supervising in Hermitage Precinct. And so I get back and...
Like every other police station, did everybody know what you went to do, or was it kept secret?
I don't think it was a secret per se. I ended up, I think pretty much everybody knew it after. Okay. But yeah, and here's the thing, I'm not embarrassed. I wasn't embarrassed about it. No. It was like,
I didn't know what the way the department was looking at it in the sense.
Yeah. Well, so I've always been very open about my addiction and stuff like that because before I went to treatment, everybody knew I was an alcoholic anyways. But all of this through this time, and what I didn't work on at that treatment was my mental health, was PTSD, was the depression, anxiety, whatever it was. I actually refused. I told my therapist, I said, I'm not seeing you. Pretty much got in a verbal altercation with the doctor there, and they never let me go back to see him. And so even at that point, I'm trying to get better. I'm at treatment, but I'm doing things my way. I'm not doing
So you spent 28 days thinking that if I just admit that I'm an alcoholic, I'll slow down or stop my drinking.
Basically.
Not what's making me drink.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What's making me drink is I'm an alcoholic, which is, to me now, not the case. I mean, I am an alcoholic, but yeah, I mean, I had my own plan.
Your body is built for more energy, more focus, more strength. But if you're feeling sluggish, unmotivated, or mentally drained, it's time to make a change. At Human Performance TRT, science meets convenience. Their hormone replacement therapy, weight loss programs, and mental health solutions are all designed to help you feel and perform at your best without ever leaving home. They offer medical-grade hormone optimization, weight loss support with personalized health coaching, and ketamine therapy for depression, anxiety, and trauma, all guided by qualified mental health professionals. HPTRT is veteran and first responder owned, and they make it simple to optimize your health. There's no locked-in contracts, and if you're already on a hormone program, switching is easy. There's no extra test if your blood work is under 6 months old. Ready to take back your edge? Go to hptrt.com and use the promo code TDP for 30% off. That's hptrt.com and use the promo code TDP for 30% off your entire program. Stop waiting. Your peak performance starts now.
I had already set in my mind what I was willing to do and what I wasn't willing to do. Because you ask people all the time, what are you willing to do to get sober? And they're like, anything. I'm like, okay, what about this? I don't want to do that though. So you're not willing yet, say you might get there one day, but like I said, I had to realize that every idea that I had to stop failed, period. It just did. And that's okay. But anyway, so I went,
in a weird way though, what I'm thinking about with this is when we look at all aspects of our life, we do that with everything.
Sure.
Hey, I want to get in shape. Mm-hmm. I can do it myself.
Yep.
And eventually there comes a point where you realize you need the help of a professional.
Hopefully you realize that. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same way when you're dealing with an addiction. Mm-hmm. Is you could have all the, now I'm not saying that there aren't. My dad, very similar to yours, his thing wasn't as much drinking, but it was the smoking. Mm-hmm. And I remember he had an incident, doctor said, you need to stop smoking. And I remember that day, and he had smoked my entire life. He literally went home and I'm done smoking.
Yeah.
And I've never met somebody who just did it that way. They're out there.
Yeah.
I do know that they're out there, but for the most of us, it's hard just to literally turn that switch off.
Sure. So what does it take? The question is, what does it take for us to get out of ourselves and say, hey, I need help? What does it take? And the answer is very simple. It's different for everybody.
Asking for help is one thing, but like you already said, you raised your hand and said, I need the help, but you didn't listen. You still wanted to do it your own way, even at their facility.
Oh, of course, because my ego is gigantic, right? And I can do this by myself, which is hilarious because if I could do it myself, I wouldn't have gone to treatment to begin with, right? But yeah, the ego's there because, like I said, we're in charge of everything. I am in charge of that scene, and if you don't do what we say you do, we make you do it. That's just it. And that is a huge ego. But, also too, like, we're down to the place, I was at this place, I was uncomfortable, I miss my kids and all that stuff. And it's like, I just don't want to talk to you about what's going on. I just don't. I did get involved with...
How old are your kids at this point?
Now, 19 and...
No, at that point in time when you went.
The first time? Probably 4 and 7.
So still too young to really see...
Yes, they didn't really remember it at all.
But no, I'm talking about your level of drinking, to really kind of correlate dad with drinking.
Absolutely no idea. And so... But yeah, I mean, I came back home. Everything was fine. Didn't drink for a long time.
What's a long time?
Well, I mean, it was over a year.
Oh, wow.
But
I thought you were going to tell me like a couple months.
Oh, no. No, what, you know, it's, I think sometimes we could keep it at bay with willpower. But for me, I think I almost felt like I knew it was going to get me eventually. You know, it was just too strong, right? And I think a lot of people, what happens is that, you know, I didn't drink for a year and a half, whatever it was. I honestly don't even remember. It was definitely over a year. But, I didn't drink for a year. I could have one. And that's how it starts again. And you suck back right in that cycle. And like for me, like it never slows down. The amount never changes. Like I go right back to where I'm at. And it's insanity because, you know, think about drinking a year later, the same amount you were drinking when you went in, what that does to you. You know, it can kill you. And it's incredible. But, you know, I was full of myself.
In that year, were you being conscious about just not being around alcohol, or kind of taking it a gallows humor in the sense of, I can be around it. I'm in control.
I still to this day don't like to be around it. I don't want to say, I'm very selective about where I go and what I do. Back then, you know, I think when I got back, it was just, I was really, really confident in my ability to not drink because of I'm me. I don't, you know, I don't know how to explain it. But I came back and I went right to work, and I really didn't take any time off, and I didn't continue therapy, and I didn't do, you know, any kind of program or therapy. I went to intensive outpatient one time and was like, ain't for me. And so I really didn't do anything. And so this is when I'm back at work now, about 2 weeks into me coming back to work, 2 weeks. I get a phone call and saying that the department wants me to sign what they call a return to work agreement. And I'm like, okay, what is that? Because I'm already back at work. Probably should have got that signed beforehand. But I said, basically, what is it? And it basically read, if you relapse, we'll fire you. And I was like, yeah, I'm not signing that. And my point to them was, if I got cancer again, would you fire me? Because it's a disease. Some people don't think it is, and that's fine, but it's covered just like that. And so I refused to sign it. And I said, yeah, I'll just do whatever you got to do to me, because because at this point now my ego's hurt, my pride's hurt. I'm pissed because I did what you told me to do, and this is what you're going to do to me. Like how in the world are we going to convince guys to get help if we punish them after they do what we asked them to do? That's insane. And so they eventually backed off that, and they did not make me sign it and didn't really force my hand at it. But, you know, like any department, you get randomly drug tested.
I want to ask a question about that, because, and I'll give you my mindset to know why I'm asking this question. Today, if you follow a lot of what's out there on social media, there is a lot of finger pointing at, oh, agencies are just screwed up. And there's so many people pointing that the agencies aren't doing the right thing. Now, you were back 2 weeks. They didn't do this. The long way around this is, did you ultimately find out who was driving that train of wanting to get you to sign that form? And where did it kind of come out of the clear blue sky? Sounds like.
No, I wouldn't say no. You know, the lieutenant over safety inspections, that's who I was talking to. I don't know who pushed him to do it. I didn't ask. To this day, I really don't want to know. That's in the past, and they changed a lot of things. So I did.
But ultimately, they backed off of it.
Yes, and you know, I didn't even consider that. I was just, you know, once that started, I was so pissed because I grew up in this department. My family works in this department. We all have great reputations. None of us have ever done anything. It's like, why are you messing with me? I did what you said to do, you know, and so. It just went on, you know, and once they backed off that, I was like, all right, cool. You know, that's great. So let it go. And then I go into work one night. It was a few weeks after that. And my lieutenant has got a drug test form for me. And I'm like, that's cool. It's what it looked like anyways. And so.
Are you in a detective unit again, or are you back on patrol?
No, I'm sergeant. I'm still a sergeant at this point.
Patrol sergeant?
Yes.
Okay.
I never was a detective sergeant.
Okay.
So I actually retired as a patrol sergeant.
Okay.
Sure, it's not much after this. But so she called me and she said, you got a drug test. She didn't really pay attention to it, and I really didn't either. So when I got it, and I was kind of sitting there, because that's normal. I mean, it's no big deal at all. Every department does it. And so I look at the form, and it doesn't say random drug test. It says breath test. And I can't remember what it actually said, but basically they were going to breath test me 8 times that year. And I thought, why? Why are you doing this? And again, now my pride is already hurt from the last one. And not that I can't look back and now see what they're talking about, but at that moment, I was just pissed.
Well, this goes back to also, like you said, though, you raised your hand
Yeah, absolutely.
outside of getting in trouble.
Yep.
So it wasn't like you got popped for DUI. It wasn't like you rolled a unit, drunk or something, and they're going, okay, we're going to let you back, but you're on a really short leash.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I took it and I looked at her, I was like, what is this? And she told me. So I ended up calling that lieutenant back. It's like, what are we doing? And he was basically like, this is what we're going to do. And I said, well, why? Tell me why you're doing this. And, he basically cited a general order that said if they find out I have trouble with alcohol or needed help for alcohol, they could do this. And I said, okay, I get that. And I honestly, at that point, don't even think that general order was valid because we had moved to a different system. But regardless, I said, well, here's the thing. I don't need help with alcohol. I've already got it. I went to treatment. I've completed, and now I'm back at work. And he basically said, we're doing it anyways. All right, then. And so I took my test, of course, passed. There were a few more incidents with my officers. One that was accused of drinking, that kind of the same thing happened. I didn't like, I felt like they were messing with him because of me. And I did not like that because I didn't really handle that lieutenant well. There were some choice words and stuff. You know how it goes. But and I'll say this about him. I've seen him since and everything. I mean, it's just no issues. Everything's cool,
From your support through all this, who is your collective bargaining unit as a sergeant? And did you reach out to your board for any assistance?
No, it was just, so we have FOP in Nashville, but I can't remember if I've ever went to them. There's not a lot of power with the FOP, unfortunately, where we were at. So,
so did you kind of feel like, in a weird way, you're on an island by yourself?
There was no question. And I didn't know what to do. And I had no one to talk to. And my first thought is, I wish I could call my dad. Maybe he'd give me some advice. But it was kind of one of those things. It was like, it's one thing. I just got to a point where I really had a bad taste in my mouth because it was pride. And it was like, I've done all of this for the city, and in my head, I've done all this, but I've done things for the city and I feel like I'm being punished. And I've never done anything here to be punished. And I'm being punished for something that you told me to do, So, and like I said, all of that's changed now, and I'll share how it has. But it was one of those, it was like, okay, and I really felt like they're going to get me for something eventually. I don't want to say that that's what would have happened, but it felt like, and it feels like when they want you, they're going to get you for something. And so at that moment, I had a job offer outside the police work, it was like a 20 grand raise. And it was at that moment I said, it's time for me to go.
Was it something you went looking for or just fell?
No, it kind of fell in my lap. So it was one of those, it was like, it's a good opportunity there. I think a lot of, I don't know how it is here, but I know back home, like it feels like a lot of police think that the only thing they can ever do is police. Like that's the only thing they're qualified for. Having gone from police work to the, civilian workforce, that is insane. There are so many marketable skills that officers have that they could do outside, police work. But I thought at that time that the department wasn't going to be good for me. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just pissed. My pride, my ego. Well, screw them. I'm out of here, And so I did leave. And that was very hard because I wasn't prepared for it at all. This was kind of a rash decision to leave the department. Not really rash, but it was pretty quick, right? And keep in mind, like, we are guys who, we don't sit behind computers. We go out and we chase people. My last day on the job, I got in a foot chase. The day before I retired was the last completed suicide call that I had. And I still remember that one. It was a 6-year-old girl, found her father hanging in the garage. And I remember trying to comfort the child. And that's 2 days before I leave the department. But, it was one of those, it was I was really lost because from my childhood growing up in the department to teenage years running around the CJC to working, to leaving, I didn't know, that's who I was. I was a cop. That's who I was. And so you go to sit behind a desk and now you're supervising. I worked for Aramark doing background investigations, supervising one of their teams. But now I've got 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds who've never, definitely never, you talk about the police, but you talk about like civilian, and it was very difficult for me. I really had a hard time with it.
I want to go down that path.
Okay.
And why I want to ask this question right now is I like talking about the transition aspect and the preparing and the planning and all that. This job fell in your lap or came to you, but you weren't actively looking for it. For somebody listening, how did you position yourself to even get this opportunity if you weren't actively looking for it?
So there were two people that I worked with prior with Metro Police who were at this company.
Okay.
So I knew them, and it kind of like literally fell in my lap. And I took it as a sign. And it's kind of, there is a quote that I heard that says, the tragedy about life is that you can only live looking forward, but it only makes sense looking in reverse. And especially throughout my life, my sobriety and PTSD and all this stuff, there are a lot of horrible things that I went through that make sense now. Didn't make sense at the time, and it sucked at the time. But I can look back and I can see where I've learned things, decisions that I've made that were bad and good, and so really, it's you have to have this level of faith, and I don't even have to explain it. I just knew I was going to be okay.
Well, there's so many components to it because it goes back to when you're talking about the transition component of it, making and building your networks. You had made a good enough impression on these two people. You had maintained a relationship with them, and they were confident in your ability to work. That you were one of the people they called on the phone and said, "Hey, we've got an opportunity for you." The flip side of that, though, let's go back to you being the decision to walk away from the job. Had that opportunity not come your way, and this is truly hindsight. You may or may not have walked away when you did. It was just because you had that opportunity, that fallback option.
Yeah. Okay. So if that option had not have been there, no, I would not have left right away. I do believe I would have left, just not right then. It was just it was at the right moment.
So for the person listening who might be going through something similar that you were going through, you've got 10 years removed. You're back giving yourself that advice. How would you have fought the organization with what you know today if you wanted to stay there and keep your job?
I think I definitely would have put up. I fought them hard. I think that was part of the problem back then. I did fight them on it, and that's why I felt like I was kind of being looked at because I didn't go along with the program. And here's the thing: it's not that the department was not targeting me. They were not. They didn't. There was nothing personal about it. I believe that to this day, right now. I don't think they had any idea what to do. And what I mean by that is when they came back, they were scrambling because no one had done it. So I actually told, and I've had a talk with the guy recently, and we were talking about better ways to do that when a person gets back. And he said, what would have helped you? And I said, knowing what would have happened when I came back, that's it. There's one thing saying, hey, Scott, all right, you need to go to treatment. That's fine. We're going to take care of that. When you get back, we're going to breath test you 8 times in a year. No problem. It felt very targeted when I got back. It felt very, I don't know what we're doing. We're just going to throw and see what sticks. And to me, given the years that I'd been on, the service that I think that I provided the city, I thought that was uncalled for, and it hurt, and I thought, man, because of the way it was approached, I didn't think it was going to stop. So I didn't really know that I had a choice in my mind. Now I want to say this so everybody, it's not like that now, and what they're doing for those guys in Nashville now is incredible. Chief Drake, David Kensington, all those guys that from the top down. I still reach out to Chief Drake, and Chief Drake is someone I had worked with in patrol. I will text him about a month or two, check in with him. He always responds to me. He always forwards what I need to the wellness, and he cares about his people, and it's very clear. I'll give you an example too of another one. I emailed LAPD chief. He's got 9,000 officers. I am a nobody to him. He responded to me within 15 minutes and put me in line with his wellness unit. And to me, that blew me away because, like I said, he has no, what chief that has that many will respond to a random email about, treatment and PTSD and all that stuff. But he did. He took that time, and that says a ton about him, and the same thing with them. It's changed. We talk about what happened just because it's part of my story, but I do want, the guys, it's not quite like that anymore. At least not where I came from. So you just have to decide, it kind of came down to me, like, what's important. Is it me getting healthy, me not dying, me not having my boys see me the way I watched my dad die, or is it this job? And it's never going to be a job for me. I believe to this, and I've had job offers to go back for different departments. I just haven't done it because I kind of fell into what I love, which is helping other officers and military guys get better, and I never could have seen this. Like, if, years ago, if you'd have said, you're going to be working at a treatment center, I'd have laughed you out of this room. That's insane. But I honestly think that part of my police career was to put me in line for what I'm doing now, because I don't think that another officer can be impacted by another officer can be there for another officer better than anybody else, because they know. It's hard for our families to be there for us because they truly don't know what's going on with us, because we're not honest with them, and what we do is we stick that stuff in our head, and it can kill us, and instead of just being, and I'm not saying that you have to go around and talk like gory details. Go to your wellness unit, go to a therapist, talk to your buddy, do something, but you cannot. It's fatal to keep that stuff. It can be fatal. Now, I'm not saying everybody, has issues, but I'm saying for a lot of us, it's fatal, because we don't know how to ask for help, number one, and number two, we don't want to ask for help, and it's always, I'll ask tomorrow. I'll ask tomorrow. A lot of us tomorrow are our way out of life, until it's too late. And then, like my dad, it's instant regret, and I'm 47 years old. That 10 years, me being dead, that's how old he was. And I don't feel old. I might look it and I might act it, but I don't feel it, and I feel like I have a lot of life, and I want to live a good one.
You made it a year without drinking. What was the catalyst to that, getting back into it? And how quickly were you back into excessive drinking?
Pretty fast.
What is the grind? It's not just a routine, but the decision we make to wake up, give everything we've got, then find a way to go further. Grind, spelled GRND, is more than a brand. It's a movement, an emotion we all feel connected to as we work daily to pursue our goals and support each other. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear has a clear mission: to give 100% and then some more, in sport, fitness, and in life. Functional, high-quality performance wear that's rooted in American culture, because you demand gear that outworks the rest. Whether you're on the field, in the gym, or building your own lane, Grind is for those who refuse to settle. Go check out thegrindcollective.com and tap into something bigger than clothing. And while you're there, use the promo code TRANSITION15 to get 15% off your purchase. You're likely already on the grind. Maybe you just don't realize it yet, but the grind continues.
There's really not a decision about it. Like it's especially then, because I'm not doing anything to keep my alcoholism at bay. And at this point, I haven't even been diagnosed with PTSD. So therapy is out the window. And it's just one of those, started a little at a time. You
were already off the job. You're working at doing the background investigations?
Nope. All right. So I retired from that and started a PI company. That's what I did for several years. Great job. I loved it. I ran my own company. It's not good for me because, like I said, it's too much freedom. I need structure. I really do. And so, it's like, it just starts a little at a time, and then it just becomes progressive. And, for me, my disease is progressive. And it's just going to, I could sit here and have a drink with you right now. Probably in a couple months, I'm going to be at the liquor store at 8 a.m, waiting on the guy to open. Like, hurry up, man. Come on, open that door. And then I'm going to go to different liquor stores because I don't want that guy to think I'm an alcoholic, because that's crazy. Like, so yeah, it's just kind of rolled like that until, again, it became out of control.
Well, you just lost your chance to have a drink with me, because I ain't going to give you one.
I know.
I'm not going to have you there at 8 o'clock bugging some liquor store owner.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like, how did that happen? How did I get here? And it's just that snowball effect. It's that quicksand. The more you try to, it's just the more you struggle, the more it happens. That accumulated into my last relapse, the bad part, which was a relapse in front of my children at a baseball game, Braves and Dodgers. And I don't need to go too much into that, other than I was transported by ambulance to a hospital because I had drank a lot. And this was I think the first time the boys saw it. And at this point they're 9 and 12-ish, and they definitely remember that one. So, that led to me being asked to leave my house on my 41st birthday. It was so bad. It's one of those that's so bad it doesn't even argue. Like, you don't even argue it.
When you were asked to leave the house.
Yes. All right. So,
let me back up on that.
All right.
Was that the final straw?
Yes.
Had there been other instances?
It was a lot, and that was it. It was when the volcano erupted, for sure.
Now, was there something specific about that was going on in your life about that day in drinking, or was it just?
Well, now this had been a long time. So it was kind of just the end of it, you know. And it's one of those two, just like the first time. Like there was the end of the first time. It's just like, this one, the second one really, the first one I asked for help. The second one I was given, you know, told and given. But we were in Atlanta and we rode back to Nashville and I knew I was getting kicked. It was the longest ride ever. But anyway, so I got home and I packed a bag and I took the boys into the office and I sat them down and I told them I had to go. And I told them why. I was always very open with the boys. And so they both came running. They jumped in my lap, screaming, "Don't leave." God. And told them I loved them. I told them I had to go. And I got up and I left. And it was that moment I realized I was just like my father. And it had come full circle, you know? And I went to liquor store. I left there and went straight to a liquor store. And that, I know that sounds insane. It's the only way I knew how to deal with it. I didn't know any other way. I didn't know what to do. I was completely lost. I left my house with the car and some clothes, and that's all I took. I wasn't going to take, I mean, you know, eventually through the divorce and stuff, I'm like, I'm not going to find my kid's house. That's crazy, you know? And so I drank for several weeks straight, hard. Wasn't sure, trying to decide if I wanted to keep going or not, you know? There was a point where I prayed for death because that's how bad it was. And looking back now, I'm like, oh God, thank God for unanswered, you know, thank God for unanswered prayers, you know? But I did. At one point I went to a bathroom, got on my knees, and my prayer was this. I said, God, fucking kill me. Just fuck. I want it to stop. I don't know how to make it stop. And the funny thing is like, I was too scared to say help, you know? And that's the craziest thing is like a lot of the people in our lives, most of the people in our lives, I'll say that, just want us to tell them what's going on so they can get us help. But, you know, fear, man, it's just so scared of what was going to happen, the end result, you know, having to admit that I failed, right? That I went to treatment and it didn't work. Well, now, let me back that. I don't say treatment didn't work. I didn't work it. Like, I went to treatment and then I failed to do what I was supposed to get better. And so I ended up drinking myself pretty much into oblivion for weeks until I decided, let me back up. I remember I couldn't look at myself. I can tell you that, you know, lots of contemplating on how did I let it get this far, you know, kind of stuff. And it was just weeks and weeks and weeks like that. And so I made a deal with myself. I said, try to do what they tell you to do one time. Try to do everything they tell you to do. And if it doesn't work, you can just go out, drink yourself to death. I mean, I know I can do that, you know? And so I went into work a program, a 12-step program. And then one of the biggest things that I did was went to therapy. And I started getting real with, my therapist that I had, the first one, had been married to a cop. So she knew how to handle, we're a very ornery bunch. So I really kind of credit her a lot with getting me in line and getting me into a place that I need, because there's a lot of therapies out there and stuff. I'm very like, there's a lot of things I don't believe in. Like, I'm not going to go do acupuncture and all that kind of stuff. And so when the lady my therapist suggested EMDR therapy, which is the eye movement desensitization. Anyways, it's a trauma therapy. I laughed at her. I remember laughing at her. And I remember asking her if it was like acupuncture. And I was like, so I don't believe in that stuff. She said, why don't you just fucking do it anyways? I said, okay, yeah, sure. Because I said, I'll do anything. And I meant that. And I, you know, especially everything that they told me to do, I did it. Not everything worked for me, but nothing hurt me. And then I was able through that to find out what worked for me. And the tricky thing is, though, over the years, you've got to adjust what works for you because you change, you know, and the things. So it's an ongoing thing. This is not something that you do once and that's it. For me, it's an ongoing daily thing, because I believe that if I stop doing what I'm doing, I will go back to being an alcoholic. It doesn't go away from me. And I'm fine with that because what I do provides me with a wonderful life. So I'm happy with that. So I started doing therapy. And here's the craziest thing. I did everything they told me to do through a program, through therapy, through all that stuff. And I got better very quick. I started getting better very quickly. And it was so fast that I was like, this can't be real. And so I was like, well, even if I'm fooling myself, it's still working. Let's keep on going. And I was very driven at this point to get better. I was coming out of the company through divorce and through all that stuff. Divorce was very, very rough. Slept on couches for years, bouncing back and forth. When I would have the boys, I would stay at my mother's or I would stay at my somewhere where the boys could have some stability. But I remember days where I would feed the boys and like, I'm not hungry, guys, and it's just like get the boys something to eat. But, there was a lot of problems between me and my oldest son, meaning how pissed he was and everything. And he was just mad. And obviously I didn't blame him for that. But, a lot of the times we'll go through that and then, it'll be a month down the road and then we're pissed because the kid's still mad or something. It's like, it's been 4 weeks. You've done this stuff to this kid his whole life, And the one thing I had to learn was I don't get to tell him how long it takes him to forgive me for something that I did to him. And I'm like, but I want that. And I remember telling the guy, I was like, man, I've been sober like 60 days. He's still mad at me. He's like, because of shit, you've been sober 60 days. So is your dog. And I'm like, damn, man, that's a little aggressive, but that's the truth, right? In my mind, 60 days erases all the stuff that I did to him, And so, he was probably 12 when that started. It has changed dramatically. It did take a long time. I think it took 3 years for him to tell me he was proud of me. It was 3 years. 3 years and 2 days before he told me he loved me again. To get him to come over to my house, I'd have to go steal his cousin because he'd want to hang out with him. So, it's just little things like that. And then he'd come over Friday and he'd want to go home Saturday. Okay. But I had to eat that. It's one of those, I had to deal with the consequences of what I did, and it wasn't fun and it wasn't fair. Not fair. It wasn't fair to him, but it definitely wasn't fun. It wasn't fast. So fast forward, it's great, and I love the relationship that we have. I love the relationship that me and my kids have where they can be honest with me. And there's a situation here recently that of something, but it was one of those, and it was like, I asked a question. It was like, I am so proud of you for being honest. Like, that's awesome. And that's what we want, right? It's not okay. Some things are not okay, but be honest with me. We'll figure things out, that kind of stuff. But I didn't know who I was. I'm not a police anymore. I'm out there on my own. Now I'm by myself. I have no, nothing. I have no money. I have none of that stuff. Like who are you? I'm like, I don't know. But the cool thing was I got to decide to be whoever I wanted to be. Just because I was a policeman for 16, 17 years and then retired doesn't mean I can't have another career. It doesn't mean that I can't change who I am. It's going to take a lot of work to change who I am, but it doesn't mean I can't. And so I put I knew who I didn't want to be. I knew the things I didn't want to do. So in the beginning, that was enough for me to make the start. I'm just not going to do these things. I'm going to continue to do what I'm told to do. Life's getting better. Everything's getting better. I'm going to keep on this path. But the problem is a lot of people stop at that. Because once the pain goes away, a lot of people stop. I have a tattoo on my side that says the pain will leave when the lesson's over. But you don't know when that is, And there were lots of lessons for me, I can tell you. But I'm grateful for every one of them because I'm not who I am today without them, It's so hard and it's so easy to quit and just drink, It's just so hard. But like I said, there were things that happened that really sucked at the time that now I see. I got evicted from my apartment, I think 2 days before Christmas one year. My buddy said, just be grateful. What do you mean be grateful? Car repossessed at my kid's school parking lot. Hey, just be grateful. What do you mean be grateful? Did you like that car? No, actually, I hated it. Be grateful, it's gone. And it's just things like that, some embarrassing stuff. Just even going to pick my kids up from school. No one would talk to me, because of everything. And that's a lonely ass feeling when you were in a room with a gymnasium full of people and you're alone and no one will talk to you. And I'll tell you what, an attorney I used to do a lot of work with, coached their kid in ball and stuff like that. And one day I was standing by I'm literally by myself at my kid's school. And she walked over, she said, will you please come sit with us? And I lost it because no one wanted to be near me. I had no self-worth, no self-esteem. And like I said, I wasn't sure if if this is what life's like, why, but it kind of went on like that for a while. And then I had a friend reach out and said, have you ever thought about working in treatment? And I was like, no, and I haven't considered it. And she said, you want to give it a try? And I just said, yeah, sure, why not? So that's kind of how I ended up, that's exactly how I actually ended up working in treatment. And I worked at a larger facility, and I started working with the guys at the house level. And I'd been sober at this point over a year. And I loved that job.
Before we go into that path, so you mentioned going to the big change for you was not just the Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12-step program, but going to therapy, and that you immediately started seeing a change. Do you remember the first time it was somebody other than you who commented like, "You're different"?
No, not specifically. I don't. Because at this point, not a lot of people want to be around me. There were not a lot of people around me. So the vast majority of the people who were around me were from a program. And what I found in that it saved my life. Because it was like, I can go into this place and tell these people all this bad shit that I did, and they understand it. And they tell me how to get through it. And then, so it's like, whenever, let's say we're traveling and we're out of town and I need to feel like I'm at home, I go to a meeting. That's what I do. And it calms me. It makes me feel okay, which is sometimes exactly what I need, you know. But you know, I tell you one thing that kind of related to that is people don't believe it. People think it's fake because people judge you based on what you've done your entire life, which is completely fair, you know. Of course he's going to screw up. He always does. Of course he's going to, you know, drink again. He always does, you know.
Well, isn't that the biggest irony coming from being a cop?
Yeah.
Because you ask a cop, "Hey, he went to prison, he reformed."
Exactly. We'll go into that too. But I'll say that, you know, in my paperwork, I was labeled a chronic relapser. And my point was this: well, we all are on the tour, or not. You know, there's very, very, very few people that get sober the first time. Very few. I know some, and I consider them rock stars, but very, very few do. And so, you know, it's very hard for people to believe it because they think you're just lying or acting or manipulating, whatever it is. And, you know, so for different people, it's different times when they see it, you know. Whereas, you know, my youngest son, it was right away. My oldest son, it was years, you know. Not everyone, because no one really, a lot of us like to think that a bunch of people are thinking about us, but they're really not. You know, no one's thinking about me more than me, you know. But, you know, there's family and there's situations where I think that people get so used to us screwing up that they're just waiting on it. And it's my fault. They're like that because I've proven that's who I am. But there's components to a program and stuff like that, and one of which is service work. I spend a lot of time working with others for free. I do work in the business, but that's not my recovery. So I have to go outside that to do work for me, myself. You know, I still do my stuff on top of work. The trap is a lot of people who work in that profession take that as their recovery, and that's not their recovery. That's their job. So I do try to, I do a lot. I do something daily, because I need that. And I can see if there's a time, because through the years, you know, it's been busy and this and that. I can literally tell in me when something starts to get squirrely, or my thoughts or things that I say, and then I can look at what am I doing or what am I not doing. Usually it's what I'm not doing that's getting me, not what I'm doing. And, you know, it's where I missed this or I missed that, or I didn't get to here, or I didn't call somewhere, you know, whatever it is. And then I just remedy that. And then it fixes it, you know. But I think we had to get to a place where we can really honestly look at ourselves and say, what's going on, right? And I think sometimes the disease can get in the way of that and say, "Ah, you're good, man. You know, you don't need to go today. You're good." And for me, that really terrified me. If the thought came in my head that you're good today, terrify me, because that's when I start backsliding, you know.
That point when you were again at the bottom, you talk about being at a basketball game and in a gymnasium full of people, being alone, and that attorney walking over and asking you. Where I'm going with this is that the importance of keeping people around us. Were you pushing everybody away, or were you trying to get people to be in your corner and they weren't, or did you have them in your corner, you just didn't realize it?
When all of this stuff started for me the last time, the divorce and all that stuff, people at the school, the vast majority wouldn't even look at me nor speak to me. So these are people, some of these people are people I drank with, and now you won't say a word to me, you know. And it's just kind of,
So who were you leaning on during this period, or was there nobody in your life?
Not really anybody. I was pretty alone No, I don't say nobody. There was a few, but people were tired of me. They were tired of my shit, and I don't blame them. And so when I started the last time, it was just me. It was very difficult, lots of fear, lots of unknown. But honestly, I kind of thought, it was the thought of, I'm going to try it one time. So in finding groups to meet with, that's who I leaned on, period. I went every day, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. And it changed. So like for me, I would wake up and like it would be hard to start my morning. So instead of waking up, I started going to a meeting at 7 a.m. That jumpstart my day. Well, now I know that. So now I'm doing this every day. 7 days a week, I'm at a meeting at 7 a.m. because it starts, okay? Now, if the day goes through and it's a great day, I'm good, right? If the day something happens, I can always go to another one. So a lot of times it was 1, 2, 3 a day. And I leaned on those people, some of which I judged as soon as I walked in that room because they didn't look like me and they weren't cops. When in reality is some of the most caring humans I've ever. Alcoholics and addicts are some of the toughest people I've ever met. Especially the ones that are sober and made it through, because they go through things that would probably kill a lot of people. But I'm more so than that, the caring. As much as I judged them, they didn't judge me. They judged me for, or I don't say judge me. They took me for who I was an alcoholic. I wasn't a cop in that room. I was an alcoholic. And I've sat in meetings with everyone from lawyers, judges, country, whoever. It affects everybody. But what kept me out of those rooms for a long time was me. It wasn't them. It wasn't anybody else. It was me and my prejudices. And, in the way I judged or had, whatever thought in my head that this person's going to be like this. Well, I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong.
The unfortunate thing, though, is, and like you talked about, when you bring everybody together in that environment, they support each other. But it's the battle to get them there, because
absolutely
the flip side to that is, like you mentioned, every one of those people probably in their friend and family group, they've shown, or where I'm going with this is, people start backing away because they know, you've said this a million times. And so when you're at your absolute bottom, the friends and family that you really need, they've just had their fill.
They're done. Yeah, they're done. But you know what? I'll say this. It's the times like when I got thrown out, that saved my life. Think about it. As much as it hurt at the moment, and as much as everything that has gone on between me and the family and all that stuff, that was the start of me saving my life. And if that didn't happen, I don't know if I'm here. Thank God I didn't get away with it. I'm grateful I got caught. I'm grateful for the pain and suffering, because without that, I'm not getting better. If it was great, there'd be no reason to stop. But the problem was I didn't know how to. I knew it was possible. I didn't know if it was possible for me, but I was willing to give it a shot. And it was like I said, it was the weirdest thing of how comforted I felt at those times. And I could tell them anything, and it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter what I had done. I didn't get judged for it. And I think that's a lot of, we're scared of being judged. We're scared of people finding out who we really are. And a lot of us, we don't want to say, because we hold ourselves to this standard that's unattainable. You cannot I don't know if you do it. I know I do. I expect perfection. And when I can't be perfect, I get pissed, and I have learned to back down on that a little bit. And, you do something wrong and you just say sorry 1,000 times. And now it's like, you say sorry once or like, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, and let it go, You've
got a lot of coffee options out there. You've got a lot of veteran and first responder-owned coffee companies as well. Trident Coffee is one of these companies, but they're different. Trident fuels your body and mind with a premium cold brew that's infused with powerful ingredients for performance, focus, and wellness. Made with organic MCT oil, lion's mane, and reishi mushrooms, this isn't just coffee. It's fuel for your brain, ensuring smooth, steady energy with no jitters and no crashes. Plus, the cocoa powder adds antioxidants, and the electrolytes keep you hydrated and balanced. Yes, they are cold brew experts, and their beans are brewed for cold brew optimization. But what does that mean for those of you who also love hot coffee like me? Their coffee tastes amazing, not bitter. So enjoy it hot or iced, mixed into your protein shake, or take it on the go. However you drink it, Trident Coffee is coffee upgraded. Get yours now at tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. That's TDP15 for 15% off your order. Stay sharp, stay fueled, stay ready.
I think for a lot of people with addiction and stuff like that, once they get through it, like in that shame cycle, like it's a disease. Yes, there's choices involved. People, whatever you believe on that, but this is not. And I tell people all the time, this is not a life sentence. Like, own it, admit it, fix it, and move on. And if there's someone in your life that wants to hold you to shame you about that stuff, then they don't need to be in your life, period. So it's kind of one of those where you have to get through that shame. You have to get through your pity. For me, it's like, all right, I'm going to give myself 2 days to have a pity party. And that's it. And I'm getting up and I'm getting to work again. And I think for me, that helps me being able to get back in that mentality. And I think that comes with the job almost. But I refuse to let someone's judge me based on anything that I have done, said, or my actions, to judge me like by my whole life. There is just based on my bad stuff, there's a lot of things. I go out today and I try to help where I can, when I can, who I can. And I'm not ashamed of that. And I'm not ashamed of my addiction issue. I'm not ashamed of PTSD. I did my part, and I'm still trying to do a different part with the same guys. But if you want to shame me for that, then go ahead. If you want to, that doesn't bother me anymore, and it hasn't for a long time. But I think that comes with recovery. And I think that comes with getting your feet under you, because, like I said, you're never going to get better if you beat yourself up constantly. That's what a guy told me that. He said, you can't beat yourself up and recover. Eventually you're going to have to let that shit go. And that's what shame and guilt is great. It motivates. It motivated me to get better and stay better. But eventually I do have to put that down to move into something else, because I can't just sit around, be upset the rest of my life that I realize, you know what I mean? But if we take that, we get better and we do something with it, I think that's a wonderful thing. I think it's beautiful, But, people might have people out there that will judge them forever on, and that's fine, that's on them. But if I will not let that affect me and my family and sobriety. If that makes sense.
Who's the company you're working with today, and talk about what they offer?
So we are Magnolia Meadows. We are a first responder program based out of Waverly, Tennessee, which is just west of Nashville by an hour. We opened at the beginning of 2024. We are solely first responder, police, fire, military, dispatcher, EMT. Right now we're male only. We will be expanding to a female program. We just started with that. We just launched a virtual IOP program, intensive outpatient, that's done virtually. The only thing with that is either you have to live in Tennessee or Florida to do the virtual stuff. You can't do it from like here, California.
Why is that?
Licensing.
Oh, okay.
But anyone from the state, anyone from the country or from the world, it really can come. We've had guys from California, Houston, New York, Jersey, all that stuff. And what we focus on is trauma or substance abuse or both. We do a lot of trauma therapy. It's a phenomenal place. It's called the GRIT program, Gaining Resilience in Trauma. And it's really where they focus on, that the core, it's like, we have the alcoholism, we have all that stuff, but, like even for me, when that went away, it's the underlying stuff that's causing the stuff that we have to deal with. Seen a lot of great success out of there, a lot of great guys coming out. It's a beautiful place, 15 beds, 30 acres, middle of nowhere, woods. It's gorgeous. Everyone eats together. We have a chef that cooks our meals. So one of the biggest things I think that I love about it is our owner and our boss's mission for first responders and military. Like I said, there's other places they'll put a civilian in there. We will not do that. We have a mission and we're holding on strong to it, and it's incredible. We try to get 3 weeks, 21 days. We prefer 30. The more we're able to do and the longer you're able to stay. But what I said, one good thing about that is that because we are first responder only, the guys start opening up very quickly, as opposed to a week down the road, like I was talking about earlier. These guys, a lot of the times, let's say if a guy comes in from California and he's a cop, I go pick him up at the airport in Nashville. So I've got an hour and a half to drive this guy and get him comfortable before he gets there. So with the fire, we have a fire guy just like me, and he does the same thing. So we'll go do groups, we'll go sit with them, we'll eat with them. Anything those guys need, we'll handle. But what we do is we're giving those guys a break so they can work on themselves, so they can get better for their families. Honestly, the hardest part is to get some of the firemen, because we have a chef and all that stuff, to get the fire guys who are used to cooking to go chill out and not do that stuff and hang out and play games and have fun. Because they'll do programming 7 days a week. And it's a lot. They do try to do the heavier stuff in the morning so the guys can kind of calm down by the end of the day. But, towards the end of the day, I was out there the other night. I went out and playing games with them, watching, just trying to have fun. Because here's the thing. If your life's not going to get better, if it's not going to be fun, what's the point? If life is not going to be better than it is right now, why would I continue? And that's the thing. But they have to learn it. Because throughout the department, their jobs, career, fire, police, military, they see so much bad stuff. A lot of us retreat into isolation. And isolation's the devil for us. For me, it is anyways. And I can't isolate. And actually, it's funny because I find when I get out and do stuff, I feel better anyways. But I just don't want to, it's that jump start to get going. But, I offer this all the time. I am my job title is the first responder community liaison. That's a fancy way of saying business development. But I go around and talk to departments. But I tell people this. I don't care who you are or where you are. If you need to talk, call me. I'm not joking about that. Cop to cop, if you're struggling, I'm not in your department. I don't have to tell anybody anything. And I will always, if I don't answer, I'll call you right back. And as a matter of fact, my number is 615-566-5857. My name is Scott. And that's a real offer for people. Pick up the phone and call me, 615-566-5857. Leave a message if I don't answer. I will call you back. We'll get you, whatever help you need. If it's here, there, it doesn't matter. The one thing I love about our place is that it's not about the money. We've had people who we haven't taken because they weren't a fit. We've helped people go other places. And all that stuff. Because I say all the time, if this job ever turns into money, I'm fine. I'm leaving. I'm going. But that's not. I mean, it's incredible to see. It's really incredible to see a company and the workers, the guys out at the house. I don't work out there at the center. I travel a lot. I all the time tell them what a great job they're doing because I communicate with these guys constantly because when they leave, they let me start an alumni program so I still meet with these guys every week. I talk to them all the time. But to see these guys come in on day one wanting to die and to see them now thriving is one of the greatest gifts I have. It's really cool to see. But we'll have guys come back out and talk. We have a group of guys who have been through our program that are willing to talk to guys who are thinking about coming through our program just because they know, it was hard enough. I had one guy, did not want to come in. I fought him on it. Finally got him there. And I told him, I said, I'll come out and see you as soon as you get there. Within 4 hours of him being at that place, and I come out there, saw him, he said, I've got brothers for life in here. He had been there 4 hours, and we're talking a lot of the times at a regular treatment, weeks before you drop that shield. So it's a really cool environment because you're with people that are just like you. We're all on police, fire, whatever. We're all on the same scene together. And it's actually pretty fun because there's a lot of good ribbon that goes on in there between the two groups and stuff like that. But it's a place I wish I had. And I said this when I went out and did the tour. When I worked at a different one, like I said, and when this came open, I jumped on it. And when I went out to look at it and learned about the program, they said, what do you think? And I said, I wish my dad had it. But he wouldn't come anyway. You know what I mean? But I wish he had. I wish it had been an option for him. I wish it had been an option for me. But the truth is, it lies with the guys. They're going to get better or worse based on them. We can provide them all the information. We can do this. We can provide support. I even go as far as I check on them throughout. I have a schedule where I check on everybody throughout the year, up into a year, just to make sure that they're okay or they don't need anything. And a lot of times, it's just a, hey, man, what's up? What's going on? A lot of times they'll call and just kind of ask questions about, because it's very difficult when you come out and you get back into regular life outside that treatment center because it's controlled. We control, everything, the food, the time and all that stuff. So when you get out, you're riding high, right? And then you get home though, and what happens when you get that letter from the job or the kids or whatever it is, you get thrown back into what you know best, which is whatever it is you were doing to begin with. So we focus heavily on mental health. We focus on the subject, if there is one. You don't have to have one or the other or both. It's, you can come for trauma, you can come for substance abuse, you can come for both, you can come for gambling, whatever it is. And our staff is really good about, one thing that I like is that the clients, we call them clients, are heavily involved in their own treatment. Meaning, when there is a treatment team meeting about the client is in that meeting. I haven't seen that until this place. So from day one, after care planning starts, okay, when you get out of here, we got to get you back to your department. We got to do this, we got to do that. And we want to give a warm handoff back to whoever gave them to us. provided HIPAA and all that stuff. But we want you to come in, start healing, and then we're going to get you back to right where you were at so you can continue that work there. We can work with therapists, like if someone has one, coordinating care. We prefer to do that, medications and stuff like that, because some people don't want to be on meds. Some people will need something changed. They meet with a doctor with us every week so they can adjust if needed. It's just people say the same thing when they see it and they come out there and take a tour. And I invite you to come take a tour. I'd love for you to see it. They say the same thing. This doesn't exist. And I say the same thing. It does now. Because if you get on the website, Magnolia Meadows, it doesn't know justice till you actually lay eyes on it. And you're in there in the feel. Because it's not a hospital, it's a house. So it's not a hospital made to look like a house. It's a house with beds in it. And we got some medical stuff in there. So it provides the guys comfort. And we have I forgot. We have a therapy dog. Captain Callie is what we call her. She's a German Shepherd. We got her about 6 months ago, I think. So the first person that greets the guys when they come in usually is Callie. She meets them at the door. And honestly, they usually all get instantly comfortable because she's just awesome. But it's, they do adventure therapies. They do outings, groups. We have a big home movie theater that's gorgeous. It's actually on the website too. But, one of the biggest things I think that I love about this place is the care that I see the guys get. Because I am them. So when we talk about things like in meetings and stuff, it's like, what do you think? Because I have been this guy. Like, I do know. And it's really cool to be at a place where you are, I don't want to say respected, but they listen to your opinion on it, and I think that's just a really cool thing. So my phone's on 24/7. And I know people are like, man, you don't mean that, but I do. And I tell you why is because a guy answered my phone call. And if he didn't, man, it was bad. It probably would have been over had he not answered. And that's what I believe. And, and I tell the guys all the time, they're like, what can I do to repay you? I'm like, just do it for the next guy. Just do it. That's all you got to do is just do it for the next guy. And they do. And that's how it grows, And we've grown pretty rapidly here lately, but our alumni program is just, it's incredible now. And it's, we'll do a weekly Zoom meeting. And you're welcome to join us one time if you want to check it out. But it's a good time for these guys to get on there because they're so nervous about who's going to see them on these meetings that they have to get on. For me, it wasn't any, like I went into meetings and it didn't bother me. But some people do, and that's fine. So they have the opportunity to get on and talk, complain, whatever they want to do, talk about things that are going wrong. I love the days where we talk about things that everything is going right. And these guys are seeing that, with the little work and stuff, it can be good. So, like a lot of the guys, when they go back, their departments are giving them some time. Hey, chill out, get your feet under you. And so I applaud anybody that does that. Metro Nashville Fire is incredible with their people. Nashville Police have been great with their people. And like I said, remember I said everything that happened to me, that doesn't exist anymore with those guys, But, people ask me all the time, like, and we talked about this, I think, earlier, but, what can we do to help these guys be more comfortable? And that's let them know what's going on. Let them know what's going on when they get back, before they go. Just be open with them. I wouldn't have cared about doing any of that stuff. Wouldn't have cared about it at all. But it just felt like it was, it wasn't prepared. And it felt rushed or whatever it was. But I'm encouraged by what I see, but what I've seen. I do think we need to catch these kids, like these guys in the academy, officers in the academy, fire academy, whatever it is, and let them know. And I do think that this generation that's coming out now is a lot different than we were, but it's still not enough. It's still not enough. And sometimes I'll go around and I'll speak at conferences and stuff like that on first responders and stuff like that, and try to do everything that I can just to pass that word, like, it's okay. All of this is okay. But we don't talk. So we talk about the problems. We talk about how bad it was. But a lot of the times, and I haven't seen, we don't really talk about the end result of like what happens after you leave. And that's why I think this is awesome. Like, what happens after you leave? What happens with your family? What happens after you try to get, if you get, all that stuff for therapy. No one ever talks about that. And that's a shame because it's incredible. Life's incredible. I still have plenty of problems. I still make plenty of mistakes. But my overall life is, it's you can't even compare it, I wish I'd have done it years ago, so I don't know.
Would you say this is your new mission in life?
Absolutely. No, new. I think it's the one I've always had. It just took me a while to get to it because I think that in order to become who we are, we have to go through something. I do believe that. And I believe if it wasn't bad, there would have been no reason to change, right? And I think that me having gone through what I went through, and I might be wrong and I'm whatever, but it's like, I think I'm a lot more effective have been a police officer with a decent career, having been through all this stuff to reach another police officer. And I do believe this is what I was supposed to do. I don't have any questions about it. And I knew that when I took the job, I knew it. Yeah.
I tend to ask most of my guests any last pieces of advice, and I gear it towards transitioning away from these careers.
Okay.
I want to give you the opportunity, though. Any last pieces of advice for somebody who's struggling, who's in their, I'll call it their dark spot right now, that you want to make sure they know about?
That's a hard one. I think the biggest thing that,
if I can put some clarity on it, if you were you listening 15 years ago.
Ask for help now. It's not going to get better. You're not going to fix it. No, this is my advice to me. It's hard to give advice to other, for me, it's
talk to yourself.
For me, it's like, stop. It's not going to get better. You're destroying your life. Like, you can get better. It's going to be okay if you ask for help. No one's going to outcast you because you're not perfect, and get better. Take the time to get better. And I think I probably would have done the therapy stuff a lot sooner. But the biggest thing is that it's like, drop the ego, drop the pride. Pride and ego, I think, almost killed me more times than alcohol ever did. And that's the truth for me. Life is great. I tell people all the time, I wish you could see it, what it was like and what it's like now. I don't necessarily love going around and telling people all my shit, and it's just not, or standing up in front of a crowd or getting on a podcast or.
I was going to say, don't get on a podcast.
I've talked in front of hundreds and hundreds of people crying and who does, nobody enjoys that stuff, but it's the truth and it's real. And I can't tell the story without it. I can't tell my story without usually cussing. I've tried to hold back on this, but cussing and cry, I have to. And while speaking, people are like, man, you get excited. I'm like, man, I'm talking about my life, not a job. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my kids, my wife, my life. I almost died. I should be dead. That's why I'm excited. I'm in California today, and I'm lucky. I am lucky. There is a lot of people that don't make it anymore. A lot of people that don't make it, if they go out, relapse, a lot of people don't make it back. Fentanyl, it's killing them left and right. I can tell you that I have a list of people that I've worked with that have passed away, and it's far exceeded police work. I think I'm in the 40s in 4 years, almost one a month, 10 a year, something like that. But these are people that I get to know personally. I learn, all of their crap that they did, deepest secrets, all that stuff. And man, it's like that. It can be so fast. And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And it's a shame. And it's some of this, like for these police guys, I mean, how many people could we help if everyone dropped the pride, dropped the ego, and let's just get down to it. A lot of my dad's generation are obviously, they never got help. But they're reaching out to me now because, and it's funny. It's like, so here's some advice. If you really want to know what it's like, don't poke around, just ask the questions, And it's funny to see just kind of ask, so what about this? And kind of what about that? It's like, man, what do you really want to know? Do you need to come in? I don't know. That's up to you. Because people will say, am I an alcoholic? And I'm like, I don't have a clue. You have to decide that. Excuse me. I know I am, but I can't diagnose you. It's just that simple. So it's kind of like, it's that, and that's part of the disease. Am I an alcoholic? Do I need to quit? Am I a heavy drinker? Can I do this? And it's very simple. Like for me, I couldn't put it down for more than a day or two. And that's how I knew, and honestly, I really didn't want to. But yeah, ask for help, ask the questions, don't be afraid to tell on yourself. It is not going to be as bad as it is in your head. It's one of those things. It's like, you want to come clean, but you can't as soon as you do. And it's like, wait, that you're not mad? That was your reaction. You might be mad, but that was your reaction. All you want to do is help. Fuck, I wish I'd done this a year ago. Whatever. And it's it makes you feel stupid when you realize it. It really does. And then like I said, then you get stuck in that shame cycle. I can't believe I did this again. How do I get out of this? Blah, blah, blah. And until you just stop, take a breath. What's going on? And then, eventually you can put that work in and you can get through through the shame and guilt. And you move on, live a good life. I'm not ashamed of who I am at all. I am who I am, and I love who I am today. But I don't live who I was years ago. I don't like that person at all.
Well, I strongly encourage you to keep telling your story because people need to hear it, and I appreciate you sharing it on the podcast.
Absolutely.
I wish you all the best going forward.
Thanks, sir.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.